Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second day of our conference, The Future of Ageing and the Silver Economy. I'm really delighted that you could join us all this afternoon, and just a quick recap on what happened yesterday. So that's just a brief graphic illustration of what happened yesterday. And we'll be having the same person doing some graphic illustrations today. So without further ado, I would like to welcome the Chancellor of DCU, Breed Horan, to open the conference this afternoon. Thank you.
Apologies, of course, I've made the classic mistake. I was on mute. It's got to be the phrase of the year, hasn't it? Thanks very much, Christine. On behalf of Dublin City University, I'm really delighted to welcome you to the conference today, and albeit virtually, to our campus here in Dublin, Ireland. For those of you joining us from outside Ireland, I extend a particularly warm Irish welcome. Céad Míle Fáilte. We look forward to the time when you can come and see Ireland in reality. In the meantime, it's great to see that this virtual environment brings together such a broad spectrum of expertise and geographical base for this important gathering. I think we're very fortunate to live in a time with this type of technology, and also at a time when the average human lifetime has practically doubled. It brings great opportunities, but also great challenges. I believe the role of higher education is to work with all those who are shaping the policies and the markets in a way that can ensure that we will all enjoy the golden opportunities that this presents. The broad range and high quality of our conference speakers ensure that this event will make a real contribution to doing this. And I know we're all looking forward to the interesting range of discussions today and tomorrow. We in DCU are proud of the many initiatives we're taking to be genuinely inclusive. From its inception as a small technological university over 40 years ago, to being one of Ireland's leading universities today, DCU has always actively engaged with the wider community and with enterprise. Through our Leading Access programme, we work hard to provide equal access to those who face barriers due to their socio-economic background. And as an age-friendly university, we're welcoming to all ages, with over 2,000 older adults on campus every week. I have to say that we're particularly proud of the leading role that DCU has played since 2012 in building the global network of age-friendly universities. Over the past 9 years, 85 universities around the world have adopted 10 core principles. These are aimed at encouraging the participation of older adults in all of the university's core activities, including educational and research programs. This conference is a valuable opportunity to build on that shared commitment, and in particular, to consider the future of aging and the silver economy. Product and service designers and marketers can be very targeted when they're selling to younger age cohorts. On the other hand, like many in my age group, we so-called baby boomers, I smile and indeed sometimes grimace on occasion at how these same people, these designers and these marketers, see us older adults as one single group. Whether it's the imagery they use or the products and services they offer, I've no doubt that they often fail to sell the right thing to the right customer. Indeed, they often miss the opportunity of selling us anything at all. This hurts their bottom line, obviously, but also can detract from our quality of life. Before I close my remarks, I want to thank Christine O'Kelly and the DCU team behind this event for the invitation to open today's conference, and indeed for all their work in making the conference happen. And sincere thanks too to our supporters, Bank of Ireland, and particularly to our speakers, and of course you, our participants. Without you, none of this would be possible. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Breed. Our next speaker is Michelle Roach, and Michelle is the head of Senior Wealth Advisory Team at Bank of Ireland. The floor is yours, Michelle.
Thanks very much, Christine, and thank you very much for inviting me today. So I'm Michelle Roach, and as Christine said, I'm the head of the Senior Advisory Model for Bank of Ireland. I am absolutely delighted to be part of this wonderful three-day event. When Christine asked us to approach us, we were really keen to get behind it. The future of aging and the silver economy is a really important topic, not just for us as a financial institution, but all industries and organizations, large and small. Back in 2019, I started a journey to look at how we could better support our senior customers. We already in Bank of Ireland had set up a number of areas to support these customers, but I wanted to be the voice of the older customers and those who found themselves lost in today's current market of financial advice. The world population is aging at an accelerated pace. People are living longer and healthier than ever before. This has profound implications for their physical, mental, and most importantly, their financial well-being. One of the first things that startled me when I took on this journey over 20 months ago was how the vast majority of people automatically assumed age meant vulnerable. It was one of our own criteria for when we were reviewing a customer. I had to change this mindset. And this is what I did with the launch of this new senior advisory model 12 months ago now. We all know older most certainly does not mean vulnerable. We know older people in the main often have access to greater disposable income. So the commercial case was an easy one to make. We did, however, think that the first and biggest hurdle might be our own legal and conduct risk teams. Again, going back to that mentality that older equals vulnerable. But to our absolute delight, they couldn't have encouraged me and my vision more. We were actually providing a much riskier disservice by not properly supporting this group to invest well and provide them with alternative solutions to your standard deposit account. We have over 500,000 senior customers on our books, age over 61. I went about separating the customers into two groups, a group between 61 and 74, and then 75 plus. This was to allow me clearly see their individual needs and then size the opportunity to develop bespoke propositions for these customers. I did this because we know both cohorts have different service preferences, life goals and ambitions. We have worked very closely with the advocacy groups over the years, like Age Action Ireland, SAGE, and of course, Age Friendly Ireland, so that we today understand the needs of all our older people, not just those who bank with us. Through their insights, our own surveys, our customer workshops, and our customer meetings, and the feedback that we receive from customers, we know that the following are really important to our older customers. To retain their independence and their financial independence is a massive enabler here. To be confident about their here and now and their future. To be recognized and treated as a valued and loyal customer. To live the life they want to live. And to be assured they are on the right path. These pillars have guided me when it came to the development of our new senior advisory model, supported by a new senior life planning journey, where we adapted with a bespoke life planning toolkit, particularly for these senior customers. And this looks at their priorities, their goals, and their ambitions that are unique to each individual. We provide discussions for interfamily generational support, with discussions about the importance of will making, but also the importance of having a living will, which is sometimes really forgotten by ourselves. Establishing power of attorney and estate management, discussions on medical costs and nursing home fees that this cohort of customers really have to think about and provide for something that may happen in the future. This model is bespoke and is supported by a highly skilled team dedicated solely to these customers. And all of this supported by a new propositions, both in terms of wealth products, but also day-to-day banking. And you can just put on the first slide there, Gavin, please, appreciate it. This journey, as you will see, at each stage, looks at each stage of life. There are needs and there are wants. Both are important and both require good planning plus clever execution. But what we have seen over the years is that when the customer becomes into the life cycle of 70s and above, there is no planning, there is no financial discussions with them. They are left and there is no engagement. But these customers need our help. They need our advice and they need to be given opportunities and options to help protect them. The introduction of this new model, the Senior Life Model by Bank of Ireland, was an enabler in a protective framework to allow us to proactively engage with these customers in a secure and protective environment. As Ireland's leading bank assurance, we designed, developed and established a unique senior advisory model, which is the first of its kind in Ireland and a truly unique offering that allows us to be positioned as the national champion, to engage with our loyal customers, to prepare and support them through pivotal later life moments, and enable our senior customers to thrive and to help them in their product life cycle with us, their bank. We introduced additional service and oversight rules around this advisory model to protect our customers. This role is timely, it's community focused, it's ethically correct and prudent from a regulation perspective. Now, more than ever, the older demographic need reassurance around financial advice. If you can just move on to the next slide, please. In Bank of Ireland, we recognise that senior customers are diverse with varying needs, resources and options, from intergenerational transfer to confidence about basic yearly living to healthcare. Age is just a number. It doesn't define a person, and it should never define a person. But we set about looking at our mission statement and trying to really put a mission together that would help support our customers. And you will see that journey on the next slide, which highlights what this team is all about. As a national champion bank, we will engage with these loyal customers to prepare and support them through pivotal later life moments, to help you, our customers, live the life you want to live, to engage, prepare, and protect. And that is our mantra. Also, the aim of the senior advisory model, on the next slide, we'll go through it, is to be a supportive partner that helps our senior customers achieve their later life goals, to enjoy the benefits of their wealth in the present, to build their wealth to enable their future goals, and share their wealth with those they love. But why now, you might ask us? Why offer this to the older demographic? adaptation to the needs of an aging population is a must if we want to support our customers that have been truly loyal to us all the way through their life cycle, to deliver a much better service to these customers, to reduce fraud and exploitation. And we see this more prevalent now in today's world than ever before. And what we want to make sure is that our customers have somebody to reach out to should they feel uncertain about any part of their life cycle, or should they get something through an email or a text that they're unsure of, that there is a person that they can talk to. And we have a unique team set up purely to engage with this, both through a telephony perspective and also through a face-to-face. It's to serve our customers brilliantly and become a true national champion for this cohort. What do our seniors customers want? I've gone through this in some detail, but they value face-to-face interaction. What we have noticed this customers is what they do have on their side is time, but they want to be truly valued. But over the last 18 months with COVID, where we were offering a face-to-face interaction, we had to adapt in the same way our customers did. And what did we do? We created a digital enhanced model, as well as offering our customers a face-to-face model. And we have found that our customers, where people may have assumed in the past that they weren't digitally savvy, they actually are. They engage with customers all the time through Zoom. They engage with their own families through Zoom, just like we are. So we had to adapt. And now we offer customers a face-to-face interaction, but also a digital platform to engagement. We always encourage that our customers bring an independent third party with them to our meetings. And why do we do that? It's to make sure that they're comfortable with what we are advising them and the conversation we're having with them. We recommend that it should be anybody of their choice. Can be a family member, can be a daughter, can be a son, can also be somebody that they trust. But we really strongly recommend that they do bring that. And then recognition from the importance of good communication and careful listening is really valuable. So we know what our customers want, and we looked at against the proposition pillars of what our customers needed. They wanted trusted people. They wanted true, valuable support anytime, anywhere. And this new senior advice team has a dedicated, highly skilled professional team of wealth specialists with experience, knowledge, and support structure to help our customers. The need for expert advice, support for big decisions, securing and protecting their financial future. So our team of experts, we have looked at and have designed special products just for this cohort, but also talking about those challenging questions, about the real importance of making that will, that living will as well, the power of attorney, and planting that seed of those open conversations that they need to have with their own family structure. We have given them access to our direct markets, our global markets, our insurance. We have special products, lending. Many people would have assumed that our lending products were not there, but we have actually a really, really strong personal lending proposition for all of our customers. But one of the key factors we had to consider this model is that we have identified age is not a vulnerability, and it never should be, right? However, given this age cohort, the likelihood that some customers may have additional vulnerabilities is really important. So where we identify vulnerabilities, we have a specialized unit that supports those customers to allow them to still live the life they want to do. And that was set up at a special support vulnerability unit. But we have to view all of our clients with unconscious bias. We have to include them in an inclusive way and not in an exclusive way. And that is the mantra of Bank of Ireland while we engage with all of our customers. The Senior Advice Specialist proposition is a compelling example of customer focus, innovation and delivery, a value-add service, irrespective of the internal and external challenges. The first 12 months of this new advisory model we've offered has exceeded all of our expectations. Our customer engagement scores and the delight from our customers that we are doing something for them and really taking a personal touch and interest in their financial welfare and well-being for the first time. Since the launch of this model, our team's NPS score, so it's our Net Promoter Score, is an average of plus 96%, which is incredible. But the customer comments are even more amazing. And we survey 100% of all of our customers who engage in this model. The group of engagement of senior customers will continue to grow. We have a platform planned out for the next 2-3 years of growing this model so that we can capture more customers and get this model out to them and engage them in a truly advocate way. The last slide there, Garvin, is, but one of our mantras was around the holistic customer engagement model, and that is key. We've got to make sure that we're engaging with customers. We balance that platform. We've got to look at their financial assets. We've got to look at their vitality assets. We've got to look at their productive assets, and we've got to look at their transformational assets. And each one of them carry true meaningful individual importance for a customer. So we're looking at their health, we're looking at the work-life balance, we're looking at their knowledge, we're looking at their own understanding of product markets, we're looking at their own skills, we're looking at where they want to go to, we're looking at their pension. And we want to balance all of them when we're giving them their individual life planning journey. Each customer gets a specialized journey from us that they keep, and we have seen this time and time again, they put it that with their own specialized documents and keep it as a reference document, which captures everything that they have for financial aspects. But I just want to leave you with just some of the comments that our customers have said, having taken this journey with us and have gone through that senior customer engagement model. Inheritance discussions are very important, and this was very good and detailed. It was a light bulb moment for me and something that we did not give much consideration of before this meeting. I would highly recommend this to anyone my age. We got so much benefit out of the meeting. This meeting and follow-up journey was excellent, and I think all people my age should do this journey. As my daughter, I really appreciated the detail and the protection that you have given my parents, and you have given me and my family by bringing my parents through this journey. Very thought-provoking, and enjoyed it, and it gave me a focus to do something different with my money. You clicked on something in my mind that I had forgotten about, but it was extremely important and worthwhile. And now I need to take action. Only for this service, I wouldn't be able to do this. It was great to be able to talk to someone. I was totally in the dark before this meeting. I was told that I had no options, but now to have this new service, I am delighted. This meeting gave me food for thought. I had pretty much covered everything, but this meeting did reconfirm to me I was on the right track and the right process. And I hope that you found this discussion enjoyable. And if you have any questions, please do reach out to me. I'm happy to take any. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That's a very comprehensive presentation. There's some questions there for you in the chat, but I'm going to move on now to our keynote speaker, Melissa Mitchell. So Melissa, I'm just going to introduce Melissa. She's the Executive Director of the Global Coalition on Ageing, the leading business voice on ageing policy and strategy, aimed at reshaping how global leaders approach prepare for the 21st century's profound shift in ageing populations. Melissa is the Managing Director at High Lantern Group, a strategic consulting firm that helps position organizations, their leaders, and their ideas in the public arena. Her 15 years of public affairs experience includes specialties in policy-related and CEO-level strategic communications, advocacy campaigns, and coalition building. And we're really delighted and really thrilled to have Melissa here today. So the floor is yours there, Melissa. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine, for that very nice introduction. And I love the opening comments from Breed and Michelle. And I wasn't going to focus too much on financial services today. So I'm so glad to hear the wonderful things that Bank of Ireland is doing. So just real quick, sorry, I need to set my screen, but hopefully you're seeing my slides. And give me just one second. So, okay, great. Sorry about that. So thank you so much to DCU and the organizing team, especially Christine, for inviting the Global Coalition on Aging to share our experiences and our work with you today. First, an introduction of us and who we are. GCOA is a cross-sector group of global corporations, and as such, representing the business voice on aging, engaging with global institutions, governments across business and nonprofits, academia, and think tanks. And we focus our work in 3 areas. the silver economy, which I know we'll talk about later today, so I'm not going to spend too much time there. But our questions are about how we grow the pie through products and services for the changing aging needs, as Breed referenced. How do we maximize the potential of a more active and engaged older workforce, done right, leading to economic growth and fiscal sustainability. Secondly, we focus on active and healthy aging, what therapeutics, what approaches to wellness, what public policies will help ensure health as we age and reduce costs in the process. And thirdly, we focus on elder caregiving. Now, with more older people in society than young around the world, what should the new caregiving paradigm look like? Very soon, we'll only have 3 potential family caregivers for every person over the age of 80. Families can't do it alone. And the answer is certainly not the old institutional care model alone. So as I said, I know we'll talk more about the silver economy later in today's program. So I'll focus on how we at GCOA help to change conventional thinking about aging and therefore motivate change with global impact. At GCOA, we believe partnership, collaboration, cross-sector, cross-discipline networking are critical to ensuring action on the policy front, as well as on the business front. And I'm incredibly honored to be speaking here at DCU virtually, of course. But back in 2013, GCOA co-hosted with the Irish presidency of the Council of the EU and the Aging Well Network at the time, an EU summit on active and healthy aging. It took place in Dublin, and back in 2013, it really did help set an action agenda for European cities and communities. We've always admired the work across Ireland, and we congratulate you all and the Irish cities and counties for all you've done to pursue age friendliness and for being a leader in these efforts. We count some of the foremost leaders in aging, political, economics, care, policy making, business innovation, and academic visionaries among our team of global advisors, chaired by Dr. John Beard, formerly Director of Aging and Life Course at the World Health Organization. So that gives you a little bit of insight into who we are, now to what we do. We have to reimagine aging and all its infinite possibilities, the theme of this conference. Realigning for 100-year lives means changes in public policy and employer practices. And to make those changes, we have to recognize how aging changes us as individuals and our society as a whole. First, work and retirement. They're dramatically changing. Just because you reach traditional retirement age doesn't mean you have to automatically stop being productive or having earning potential or giving back to your community. With more years, and hopefully more healthy years, there's more opportunity to do more because you want to, because you can. Second, investments in health and preventive care have value and this relates back to the productivity point. Through digital devices and monitors, smarter assessments of what type of care is needed, when and how, through innovative medicines and life-saving vaccines. As lifespans increase, we can also increase health span. Finally, when we engage with businesses, we find that very few have any strategies geared towards older consumers or older employees. So it's great when we run into ones who are in such a leadership position, like what we just heard from Michelle. So that's when we see that they don't have aging strategies, it's a huge miss and a misalignment with the massive demographic shift we are facing. And now is a critical moment when the UN and the WHO have declared this decade, starting in 2020, the decade of healthy aging in pursuit of the Sustainable Development Goals. So we look at wellness through the lens of healthy aging and functional ability. This is a major change in our definition of health, shifting from being merely about absence of disease to the ability to maintain the fit and mental capacities to do the things we value. This is now becoming the global health goal as countries around the world recognize the seismic shift brought by longevity and the simultaneous decline in birth rates, giving rise to more old than young. Today, a 10-year-old girl has a 1 in 2 chance of living to be 104 years old. So my daughter needs to think a lot differently than her grandparents or even her parents about her health, how she maintains functional ability across her entire lifespan. To help her do that, we need new institutional approaches to wellness and healthy aging. And this is the WHO schematic well, the first column you see represents what we traditionally think of as healthcare cost. You put money into the health and long-term care system. learning beyond university education, social programs to protect older people. These are typically seen as basic societal obligations to maintain the structure of society until we die. But when you view these expenses, knowing that our potential for longer lives is still yet untapped, these should be seen as investments. Over the past century, we've had amazing innovations in sanitation, technology, healthcare, modernization, and urbanization, which have collectively given us longer lives. What we need to figure out now is how to ensure healthier, longer lives. Then we have incredible benefits and even valuable returns on our investment. These include increased productive workforce engagement, increased consumption, and therefore economic growth, entrepreneurship. And we've seen a lot of great examples of entrepreneurship from older entrepreneurs, as older people have so much to give post-traditional retirement. And we also will have a more age-inclusive society, which leads to a more inclusive society as a whole. So if we're to focus on maintaining functional ability as we age and invest in healthier aging, then the returns will be great. So how do we get there? From a tactical and strategic point of view, we work with organizations like yours to showcase the opportunities of aging if we would only adapt our mindset, embrace innovation, and understand that aging is an incredible gift. It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom if we simply think with a 21st century approach and not a 20th century one, and adapt to this new normal with more old and young across society. So we convene experts through roundtables, workshops, conferences. We produce white papers and reports that emphasize that aging necessitates urgent action for countries to address healthy aging, or that aging means workplaces need to adapt, not that workers need to conform to an outdated workplace norm, or that overburdened health systems to survive, prevention and care in one's home should be the standard, not the exception. These are just a few examples of our work over the past 12 to 18 months, and all can be found on our website. I'd love to talk about all of them, but that would take a bit too long. As we do our work, there's a common misperception that we're only focusing on today's older population. But if we get this right, we get it right for generations to come. This quote unquote aging opportunity is not just about old people, it's about all people. It's fundamental for how we think about our work, because if we're solving today's aging challenges, we're also solving those challenges for the future. So change needs to occur across all institutions of society, all types of organizations, from country governments to global companies to small businesses to health systems to universities need to have aging strategies. We need policies to make those strategies a reality. And as individuals, we can't rely on conventional thinking. Why should retirement be automatic despite one's economic or personal goals? Why should a 72-year-old with shortness of breath and fatigue be dismissed by her doctor as merely showing signs of aging instead of being evaluated for symptoms of heart failure? Why should university educations be primarily reserved for 20-somethings when learning should be lifelong? If society continues falling back on ageist assumptions, then we've all failed. I'm really pleased to have gotten the question from Christine to share some examples on how GCOA is working to advance a positive global agenda on aging, to drive change, to promote partnerships, to align business strategy with policy, and create platforms to demonstrate leadership. And it really that's what we're doing every day. I'm going to share 3 examples of projects we have ongoing and hope that you will see how we are doing all of the above. And in the end, I'll summarize with points that I hope are particularly relevant for the university and higher education community. My first example places emphasis on the diseases and conditions that increase in prevalence with age. We recognize that declines in vision health, cognitive health, bone health, for example, don't have to be normal parts of aging, that prevention, treatment, and care can alleviate the impact of these conditions on individuals, on families, healthcare systems, and budgets. So for the education community, I'd ask you to consider, how can we teach the wrongs of ageism like we teach the wrongs of other isms like racism and sexism? For vision health specifically, ageism and policies that don't prioritize vision health as critical for one's independence are major barriers for action. Vision loss is a top fear for people of all ages, and 90% of vision loss is preventable or treatable. So we simply aren't doing enough. At GCOA, we work with some of the leading advocates in vision health to bring the aging argument to help spur urgency. We activate global networks to elevate conversations, which is what we did when we launched the International Vision Health Scorecard. It evaluated 15 countries on their policies, the action or the inaction on vision health. It certainly spurred conversation, and using it as an ongoing advocacy tool is helping pinpoint needed change at national levels. And we do this in a number of different topics. Our work in digital health is the second example I want to highlight, and it's been touched on a little bit already in the program. Following the first ever high-level forum on the silver economy co-hosted by GCOA with the Finnish government in 2019, we were approached by the International Telecommunications Union, which is the UN arm for technology, information technology. So they have an annual gathering on tech, digital, ICTs, and they had never before had any focus on older people or on aging, which they to their credit, recognized was a huge miss. So through a partnership with the World Summit on the Information Society, their forum called WSIS, we've been able to help change the narrative about older people and ICTs and the role of tech in healthy aging. The network is large and expanding, and in 2021, our second year partnering with WSIS and ITU, we held virtual WSIS with a full lineup of expert speakers, the first ever Healthy Aging Innovation Prize to reward basically a startup in this space, and the first ever Aging Better with ICTs hackathon. We had young entrepreneurs, startups, university students, older people themselves, experts engaged, and we hope it will continue to grow participation in the coming years. So a question for universities and higher education: how do we do a better job of bringing all generations together for learning, for understanding that studies actually show that intergenerational teams are more productive than single generation teams? How can we better leverage partnerships like our GCOA WSIS partnership for stronger engagement? Because we would love to get all of you engaged. The expertise of our panelists during WSIS this past year was unmatched, with UN leaders, academics, EU officials, CEOs, scientific experts, medical professionals, the WHO, tech innovators, talking about the opportunities at the convergence of tech and aging. Many follow-on conversations have ensued since then, and GCOA now leads a digital health working group to further policy insight and business leadership on these topics that you see listed here. From lessons from COVID-19 to high-tech and high-touch care to busting myths about ageism. We need everyone engaged in these conversations, and we will co-host WSIS 2022 this coming year, so we hope you can join us. Earlier, I also mentioned the hackathon, but I couldn't resist showing you some of the virtual interactions leading to the very real possibility that some ideas were coming to market, not least because they were shared in co-creation with experts and older people themselves. We focused the hack challenges in 4 areas: Alzheimer's, frailty, transportation, and fintech. And what's most exciting to see is this co-creation process across generations. And it was really great to see younger generations investing their time, their energy, and their skills really in their own aging futures. So my third and final example is our work to help elevate and grow the caregiving workforce, and to put a spotlight on some work that we've been doing in Ireland. Demand for caregiving is up, but supply of caregivers is not moving at the same pace, with negative impacts on older people who need care, on their families who need respite from some of the care responsibilities, on their family caregivers' workplaces, because it has an impact on their productivity in the workplace. And it also impacts women more than men. These are all critical challenges to solving this problem. So a question for universities and higher education community that comes to my mind is, why aren't our soft skills like compassion and grit, things that are really important for caregiving and making it into a career, why aren't those evaluated across our classes? And should caregiving be taught, accredited, and rewarded in classrooms? Education around caregiving is a critical conversation that we're amidst. So we authored a report earlier this year to show the growing economic opportunity. There's so many caregiving jobs available, but it's too often seen as low respect and low pay. Transforming caregiving can only be realized if we work toward elevating the profession from the inside out. And only then can we expect this workforce to be rewarded and recognized for the essential value they provide society. So that really, the responsibility is on those who employ and develop the caregiving workforce. So in July, we produced in partnership with our member company, Home Instead, this report, and we've had multiple strategy sessions across different regions. And just last month, we partnered with the OECD on a workshop to address some key recommendations. And those include changing the perception of the caregiving profession, establishing meaningful standards for training and education so that you can have quality care, supporting and rewarding caregivers better, commensurate with the value that they actually provide, and ensuring that care in the home is recognized as a valuable part of health and social care systems. We're pleased to say that the report has been recognized by your Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, as part of the government's efforts to add more caregiving jobs, partnering with Home Instead. So this is a great example of how global strategies for aging can have impact nationally and even locally. And that's what's been happening in Ireland. At GCOA, we've often recognized national level leadership or opportunities that can be communicated, replicated, or learned from. And that's the case with the upcoming government decisions on statutory home care. If older people want to and can stay at home at any age, why should they be incentivized to live in a facility? Why can't we make sure that there are opportunities and packages for them to stay in their home? We addressed these concerns and urgency for action with Irish and global thought leaders and mapped out some opportunities for action and devised some recommendations. The goal is that Ireland can be a model for others around the world to ensure the right type of care at the right time can be provided, much like Ireland has always led with its age-friendly cities and counties. And I know Michael Wright from Home Instead will be speaking with you tomorrow, and he will touch on some of these recommendations and the timing for advancing them. So saying that I'm almost out of time, I wanted to get to some key takeaways that I hope this community, this age-friendly university community can build on and learn from. First of all, and I hope you'll see that from some of the examples that I've provided, don't go it alone. Well-balanced partnerships are really a key to success. Voices are going to be more impactful together, and choose those voices based on alignment of ideas, willingness to be a little controversial, and the ability to influence together. To that point, don't operate in silos. Engage across sectors, across disciplines and geographies. In that process, you'll learn more and you'll have greater and faster impact. And really importantly, don't fall victim to ageism. Recognize that longevity, the longevity that was gifted us in the 20th century, should empower us as a society and not spur generational conflicts. On the do side, do leverage aging for urgency. This is really my biggest message to you. Aging is a lens, it's a framework. It's a construct through which to view existing policies, systems, and ways of thinking. Because society is aging, we need to change policies, systems, and ways of thinking that are outdated. Political leaders cannot ignore aging anymore, as it is having direct impacts on economies. Do recognize the self-interest. By working toward an age-friendly world, we're creating a world that's better for us and our children to age in as well. And finally, do take action now. Now's the time. You really can't delay. Aging is a mega trend that's built in. It's here now, and it's with us for decades to come. So you want to be ahead of the curve. So with that, I'm going to close with just a quick story about thinking differently about education. Back in 2018, I was on the campus of Harris Manchester College at Oxford University, and we were on campus hosting a GCOA membership meeting. During afternoon tea, we saw a campus tour was going on, and the guest of honor for that campus tour was none other than Katy Perry, the pop star Katy Perry. So being a big fan, I struck up a conversation and I made sure that she knew about aging and aging opportunities, of course. And that she knew about abandoning, and she learned from me about abandoning traditional mindsets about our linear life course. Her response was that as she was touring the campus, she was actually thinking about enrolling in theology classes. And there, in her 30s, she became a convert of dismissing old ways of thinking about, of thinking inside of these long institutionalized structures of society and new ways to think about aging. And we all have to do this because we are all aging. So thank you so much for your time today. And I really look forward to the ongoing discussion. And we at GCOA hope to have the opportunity to work with you in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Melissa. Absolutely fantastic, and lots to think about there for the audience and the participants today. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Professor Martin Ellison, and Martin is a professor of economics at the University of Oxford and a fellow of Nuffield College. He gained his PhD in economics from the European University in Florence and was previously a consultant at the Bank of England and professor at the University of Warwick. I leave the floor open to you, Martin. Thank you very much for participation today. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm an economist, which makes me fearful that the participant numbers are going to collapse within 2 minutes. I have no Katy Perry stories to tell. I have only hard numbers. There's going to be dollars and things. So please bear with me. I'd like to talk about some work that I've done with people you may know. There's Andrew Scott, who's the founder of the Longevity Forum. And there's David Sinclair, who's professor of medical science at Harvard Business School, who does epigenetics. What we aimed to do in this research was turn up the volume on this discussion amongst policymakers, primarily thinking of people sat in the treasury of government. And our aim was to show how valuable it would be to target aging. And what we mean by target aging is medical advances and also social science advances that make aging more desirable. The result we're going to get some big numbers. It's going to be very valuable to target aging. Not only are they big, but they're going to be bigger than we thought, and they're going to be more interesting than we thought they would be. So how do we value longevity as economists? Well, we start with a simple framework where there are essentially 3 inputs that we think about. On the left-hand side, there's a survival function. What's the probability of living to a certain age? There's a health function with what health we can expect should we be able to live to that age. And there's a wage function that should we live to that age and decide to go to work, what sort of wage can we expect to be drawing? Now, those 3 things input into a person or input into a family, and the family is going to be trading off things like, do I want to consume goods or do I want to go and consume leisure? Essentially, how much do I want to work over my lifetime? And then they're going to be deciding when they want to consume. How much do we want to consume when you're middle-aged, when you're old, or when you're young? Those things are going to depend on preferences, and they're going to depend on interest rates. They're going to depend on exactly the sort of products that we saw the Bank of Ireland will be offering to people considering working on their life plan. Out of that comes a profile of how to consume over time, what labour supply to deliver over time, and finally, what saving and borrowing decisions to make over time. So to measure and value aging, what we're going to do is we're going to say, how much would people be prepared to pay to, say, improve that survival function so that you could live to be longer? Or maybe how much they'd be willing to pay to improve that health function so that when they're living, they will be in better health. We're not going to do that today, but you could also think, how much would they benefit from improving that wage function? So that might be to do with age discrimination in the workplace. We're going to get big numbers. To help you along, we've developed a few cutesy scenarios to think about. The first one is, how much would you like to extend your life? Let's change the survival function, but let's not really change the health function. The cute scenario here follows the Struldbrugs, who are people from Gulliver's Travels. The Struldbrugs are born immortal, but they age normally, so they live in continuously worsening health. What we find is that people do value pure increases in life extension. At birth, an extra year of life expectancy is worth about $100,000 to a person, even with no change in health. If you get to the age of 60 or 80, you value that increase in life extension even more. It's about 200,000. And that's because for a young person, extra years of life is not that important. It's happening a lot in the future. And for an old person, it's much more imminent, and you've actually made it to those years. So of course you are very, very interested in having extension. Now, although that's a big number, it does tend to tail off quite quickly the more you increase life extension. And the reason for that is obvious, because when you extend life more and more without improving health, you're running into more and more years when you'd be in poor health. So people value that, but they value it less because of the poor health. We could also think about instead improving health while not particularly thinking about survival. That would be an idea of compressing morbidity. Let's change health without changing the survival. Our cutesy character here is Dorian Gray, in the Oscar Wilde's book, where we know Dorian Gray stays healthy until he dies, although his portrait up in the attic doesn't. So full compression of morbidity would be we're perfectly healthy and then we die. It turns out in our calculations that people value this even more. It's about $200,000 at birth for an extra year of healthy life. And it's much more valuable at the age of 60 and 80 than it was at birth. It doesn't tail off very much as you make health better and better, but eventually it has to tail off, where the point that people have got this full compression of morbidity, that once you've got people perfectly healthy through their life, there's no value to improving their life. So let's go to our idea of targeting aging. And what we're going to find is that that's really good, because targeting aging improves both your survival and your health. We can think of two ways that might happen. Maybe you age, say, to the age of 20 normally, and then after that, instead of aging at full speed, you age a bit slower. So for every year after the age of 20, your biological age only goes up by 9 months. That's the light blue line here, showing that chronological age doesn't rise one for one with biological age. We think of that as a Peter Pan scenario, because you are young forever. Not quite young forever here, but you're younger for longer. Alternatively, you could think that you age normally, and then there's a certain point where you have some medical intervention that actually reverses your age. So you live normally to the age of 50, and then you have some medical intervention that restores you to the health of, say, a 30-year-old. We call that the Wolverine scenario. Wolverine is a superhero. So what's there not to like? Superheroes and Dorian Gray characters in the presentation. Wolverine can regenerate tissues. So if he loses an arm, he can grow one back. Now, we again get large numbers for targeting this aging. These are very valuable interventions for people. And now they start that they don't fall so fastly as you do more of them, because these things complement each other now. You target aging, you make people healthier. And because they're healthier, they like to live longer. And because they live longer, they want to be healthier. And those two things move in lockstep and end up producing a lot of value. So far, I've said, wonderful, isn't it valuable to stop aging? I want to detour just for a short while to say, well, can we actually do that? Are there treatments out there that would be able to stop that aging? And if so, how valuable are they? One of the most famous treatments out there is the drug metformin. There's a couple of pictures of you for the chemists out there on the left. This is a drug that's thought to slow down or reverse aging. And I've shown you some pictures there from a research paper which was done in California, I believe, where they looked at veterans who were given metformin versus the ones who were not. The blue lines in these are the incidence of various morbidities not having taken metformin, and the red ones are when you've taken metformin. And we see there dramatic changes in the incidence of cancer, cardiovascular diseases, frailty-related diseases, depression, and dementia from taking this drug metformin. Now, I don't want to be an advocate of this drug to 91 participants with lots of risk involved. This is not a clinical trial. Obviously, we need clinical trials to think about this sort of treatment. But taken at first value, these are very big reductions in cancer, cardiovascular disease, and so on. We can put that through our framework to say, how valuable to society would this type of treatment be? And the answer is very, very big. At the age of 65, a treatment like this is potentially worth more than $1 million to you. A little bit less when you're younger, but $1 million at age 65, because it's going to make you younger, it's going to make you live longer, and it's going to make you live healthier. Part of the reason why that happens is because it's targeting aging. Think of if I eradicate cancer. Eradicating cancer is actually worth slightly less than this treatment. And the reason it's worth less is it will be great to eradicate cancer, no doubt about that. But if I don't get cancer, but I'm going to die of cardiovascular disease, that's not so great. Yeah, I'm happy. I want to eradicate cancer. All the research, all the charities wanting to eradicate cancer, that's wonderful stuff. But aging gives you these all at the same time. It's the comorbidities argument, where aging acts on all of them. Let me wind up by thinking about this at a society level. So suppose as a society we're able to slow down aging. Well, that's going to lead to more people, and it's going to lead to people being on average older. The median age of people is going to go up. Well, if you have more people, then it's going to be more valuable to slow down aging, just for the simple reason that there's more people whose aging you would slow. If those people are older, it's also going to be more valuable to slow down aging. So those two things put together is going to mean it's going to become much more valuable to slow down aging if you slow down aging. So there's going to be more demand for further slowing of aging. That further demand we want to lead to more slowing of aging, and we can create a virtuous circle. The more that we target aging, the more value there is to making further targets of aging. We summarize that in our very final words: all's well that ages well. Thank you.
Oh, many thanks for that, Martin. When I read your paper, I was blown away by the concepts and the ideas that you had, that superheroes approach to explaining it all to a complete novice like myself. So thank you so much.
You're a superhero, Christine. We know.
He's got a bit of the Irish blarney there now. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Richard Adler, and Richard is a distinguished fellow at the Institute for the Future, Palo Alto. He's also principal of People and Technology, a research and consulting firm based in Silicon Valley. He's been a leader in the fields of aging and technology for more than 2 decades. So you're very welcome this afternoon, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I'm going to put up some slides. Hopefully we can see those. So I am going to talk about work that's been going on in my part of the world over the last 2 years on promoting digital inclusion for older adults. I'll explain what I mean by digital inclusion, why it's important, and what is happening now to do something about it. And I'm going to talk about work that's going on here in my neighborhood, but there are other projects in this area going on all around the world. Let me just introduce where I am here. Just a minute. So I am based in Santa Clara County, which is at the southern end of the San Francisco Bay Area. The county has a population of just over 1.9 million people, and makes this the second largest county in terms of population in the state of California. And it's also the largest county in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's also known best as being the home of Silicon Valley. It's the site of the headquarters of hundreds, if not thousands, of high-tech companies, including Apple and Google and what used to be known as Facebook and now is Meta, Intel, Hewlett-Packard, as well as the home of Stanford University, which is really the place where Silicon Valley sprung from. It is also the location of age-friendly Silicon Valley. In 2017, a group of us and leaders in aging decided that Santa Clara should become the first county in the United States in which every city became recognized as age-friendly. There are 15 communities in the county, and in fact, all of those, from Palo Alto in the north down to San Jose in the south, we all have been recognized as age-friendly by the World Health Organization. So in terms of the demographics of the seniors, I mean, when people think of Santa Clara County or Silicon Valley, I think they usually think about young techies, but in fact, almost 14% of the population is age 65 and older. It's about 268,000 people, and that number is increasing fairly rapidly. Not all of them are affluent. 8% are below the federal poverty level. And it's also an extremely ethnically diverse county, 2% African-American, 14% Latino, Latinx, 35%, more than a third of the county are Asian, and a minority are Caucasians, 47%. So very diverse county. So let me focus on the issue of digital inclusion. And the goal is to close the digital divide for older adults in this county to combat social isolation, provide access to vital services, and encourage greater social participation and engagement among the population. So let me explain why there is the need for this. The reality is that older people are consistently lagged behind younger people in the use of digital technologies, including, this is a slide on growth of use of the internet. You can see over the past 20 years, this is by different age groups. The line at the top are the young people, 18 to 29, and the bottom line is people over 65. And you can see all the lines go upwards, but that gap remains. In fact, the gap between young people and seniors was 50 points in 2000. It's still more than 30 points today. That older adults are just simply not getting online, are not participating at the same rate as younger people. The bottom line for us is that there are twice as many older adults who lack home broadband compared to younger people. Again, now this is those who do not have broadband at home, which is kind of the key to being online. All of us certainly have that because we're participating in this conference on Zoom. Back there in the beginning of this century, very few people had broadband, but those lines have all gone down. And now for the majority of younger population, it's about 20% who still lack it. For older adults, it's closer to 40%. So the question is, why do we care about this? Why is this an issue of importance? Well, there are really two major reasons. The first is loneliness and social isolation. When COVID hit, older people was the group of people who are most at risk from serious illness and even death from COVID. And so social isolation became a necessity. For those of us who've had access to the internet and to electronic means, we've reached out with Zoom, and it's made a big difference. But if you're isolated and alone and have no digital connections, you can really be socially isolated. In addition, there's a limited access to essential services. Let me just give one kind of striking example. This was an article which appeared in our local paper, the San Jose Mercury, a few months ago. Healthcare zooming past many seniors. When COVID hit, like other fields, medicine shifted very rapidly to providing services online. And it turned out for a lot of us, it's much more convenient and much easier to use. But if you are not online, you do not have access to that. And it's not just healthcare, banking. We heard the presentation from the Bank of Ireland at the beginning of our session this morning about how they've moved to digital services, which is great if you're online and useless if you're not. Online shopping, ride hailing, using services like an Uber or a Lyft. More and more online education is going online, and even social services. In the United States, the way you get access to your Social Security benefits now is primarily online. So what do we mean by digital inclusion? It's ensuring that all groups in society have the means to use the internet, and it includes three components. First of all, an access device, a computer, a tablet, or a smartphone, some kind of broadband network connectivity, whether it's wired or wireless, and particularly for seniors who grew up without technology, unlike the kids who just find it part of their everyday life, access to training and support that will allow people to use the internet confidently, effectively, and safely. And I would say that for older people, that you really want to have instruction and support that is appropriate to that age group. And it's a little different than how you teach younger people. So about 2 years ago, in August of 2020, a group of us approached the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, and we had noted that they had made a large contribution to help kids and their families get online for access to the schoolwork and homework, but they hadn't done anything for older people. So we asked them to do something about it, and they voted to authorize the creation of a senior digital inclusion work group that's being supervised by the Department of Aging and Adult Services in the county. So we got organized. We have a group of approximately 30 members representing agencies in the city and in the county, nonprofit organizations, businesses, libraries, senior centers. And we've been very busy. In the spring of 2021, we sponsored a series of webinars. We issued a report. And in this fall, we began seeking funding for a much larger pilot. So let me just talk very briefly about our projects. In March, we ran a series of seminars we called March Madness, which is what the basketball playoff tournament is called. We had a series of webinars, one that explored the challenges of introducing older adults to technology, another that looked at the opportunity to extend telemedicine services to older adults, and finally one that focused on the kinds of online programming that would be appropriate for older people. In June, we published a white paper called Promoting Digital Inclusion for Older Adults in Santa Clara County. It's about a 50-page report that covers demographics, data on the state of tech use by older adults, a discussion of what the lack of tech access means, and then a description of a large number, a surprisingly large number, of local, state, and national digital inclusion projects. There's a lot of work going on. Our sense was, though, that they were rather disconnected and uncoordinated. This report is online at agefriendlysiliconvalley.org, which is the website of the organization. And anybody who is interested in promoting digital inclusion, a lot of that data is not just specific to Santa Clara County. I would recommend that. And finally, the most recent development in just a few months ago, we have now formed a San Francisco Bay Area Digital Inclusion Coalition. There are 9, there's Santa Clara down in the lower right-hand corner in the southern end of San Francisco, but there are 9 other counties with Sonoma, Napa, and Solano up north, San Francisco in the middle. And it turned out that all of these counties had initiatives underway that were promoting digital inclusion for older adults. And so we've begun to meet to think about what we might do together. We're planning to work to raise visibility of the issue, to share best practices, and also work together to seek more support. So that's just a quick snapshot of what we see the challenges and what the opportunity is for getting older people online. So I will stop at this point.
That's super. Thank you so much, Richard. And for our panelist, Richard will be actually moderating the panel discussion at the end of the session today. And it's great to see all of that age-friendly work going on in your community. So thank you so much for that. Can I just remind the panelists just to check in the Q&A boxes if there's any questions for them directly and answer them if they have them. Our next speaker is Dr. Aisling Conway-Lenihan. And Aisling is a lecturer in economics and research with the Hinks Centre for Entrepreneurship Excellence at Munster Technological University. Dr. Lenihan is the project lead on the Interreg Europe Silver SME project with a key objective of encouraging entrepreneurship and innovation in the silver economy. You're very, very welcome today, Aisling. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. And thanks for the invitation to speak with you today at this conference. As Christine said, I'm an economics lecturer and researcher in MTU. So what I'm going to talk to you today a bit about is research that I've been working on with my colleagues down in MTU. So it's all around the area of awareness and potential of the silver economy for enterprises, and specifically it focuses across 8 EU regions. So primarily the presentation is based on work that I'm working on in terms of an EU Interreg project, and it's called Silver SMEs. And other work that I've done with my co-authors in MTU, Helen McGurk and Niamh Lenihan. The aim of the Silver SMEs project is to improve the implementation and delivery of regional policies for SMEs competitiveness by building on opportunities arising from the silver economy. This specific EU project includes partners, 9 EU partners, Portugal, we have 2 partners in Spain, Slovenia, Poland, Sweden, Belgium, France, and we're the Irish partner. So before I get on to the research emanating from that research project, just looking a bit at, as Martin mentioned earlier, he's an economist, I'm an economist as well, so I have a few stats for you as well. So just around—
Sorry, Aisling, you're not actually sharing your slides there. I don't know if you wanted to share your slides.
Yes, I do.
Sorry. Do you have them? Sorry.
Yeah, 2 seconds there now. And
Cheers.
Yeah, so you might confirm when you can see them.
Yep, will do.
Can you see them now?
Yeah, I can see them there. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you can just see the slides, just nothing on the side, just the slide itself.
Yeah, just the slides, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So yeah, as Martin said earlier on, you know, I'm an economist as well, so I have a few stats around population. So in terms of the estimated and projected EU median ages, so specifically looking at 2020 and out to 2040. So if we look at Ireland, for example, you know, we compare quite favorably amongst other EU countries. We would considerably have a lower median age compared to others. So in 2020, our median age was 37.5. And by 2040, it's estimated to grow to 41.5. Across the selection of other EU countries, Poland, Spain, Slovenia, and Portugal, you know, they are estimated and projected to have an older median age into 2040. Looking at the EU average, while we may fall below it, as I mentioned, Poland, Spain, Slovenia, and Portugal lie above it. Currently, Cyprus and Ireland are the youngest in the EU right now. So in terms of population age structure, so here the bar chart represents 3 age cohorts. So the yellow here is 0 to 14 years, the blue represents 15 to 64, and the orange is 65 plus. So the 2 age groups up to 64 are projected to decrease as a proportion of the total population, while those aged 65 and over is projected to increase out to 2040. So by 2040, it's set to increase there to 28.8%. EU population is getting older, and there are factors that are driving that population aging, such as increased longevity, so we're living longer, falling fertility rates, you know, we're having less babies, and migration. These are considered key drivers of population aging within the EU. In terms of the silver economy, and there are differences around the age group. You know, 50, someone look at it, others look at it as over 55, and so on. But for the purposes of the research that I was involved with in terms of the EU Interreg project and also the research in MTU, we focused on those who are aged 50 and over, and that's based on a European Commission definition. And it looks at the sum of all economic activity that serves the needs of people aged 50 and over. And it looks at the direct and indirect purchases that the over 50s make and what are effect of that expenditure. So coming back to the research then, so the focus of the research was all around this idea of awareness, the awareness around the understanding of the actual term silver economy and what it actually means, awareness around the development of goods and services and the potential opportunities related to the silver economy, awareness of training related to the silver economy for companies, and the awareness of policy supports for the silver economy. So the focus of the research was in those 4 key areas. So I'm just going to go through a small bit in terms of the research underlying each of those 4 areas and the findings. So awareness and understanding of the term silver economy. So basically it was research that was carried out across the 8 EU regions, and in terms of interviews that were carried out with policymakers, SMEs, civil society and research institutions. And when it was asked what they understand the silver economy to mean, some respondents indicated it was a financial thing. Others indicated that when they took part in the interview. That was actually the first time that they came across the term. Others indicated it had something to do with older people. Some did show that it had an economic awareness in that, you know, it involved the consumption needs of older people and, you know, the consumption and what's generated by the activities of those over 60. And finally, then other respondents indicated a social awareness related to services provided to older people. So I suppose what key from that is that while some indicated that they're familiar with the term, but when it was probed further, they weren't clear on what the silver economy actually means. Moving on to the second area around the development of goods and services and potential opportunities related to the silver economy. So the awareness there was that, you know, respondents indicated that new products and services that were developed were focused on younger needs and wants. That's what respondents felt. They felt that there was a lack of availability and training in the silver economy. They felt there was bureaucratic obstacles that prevented them from taking advantage of opportunities in the silver economy. Over 50% acknowledged a strong potential for SMEs in their region to develop new business opportunities to serve an aging population. So there was a strong indication that there is a potential, but you know, they do need supports, they do need training and supports from the policy side, the supply side. Number 3, in terms of the awareness of training related to the silver economy, 37.5% of respondents indicated that there was training in their region. 45% indicated that they didn't know if there was or there wasn't, and 17.5% didn't know. So there is a lack of awareness of tailored training for SMEs, for small enterprises, medium enterprises in the silver economy across those 8 EU regions. Awareness of policy supports for the silver economy, again, 66% indicated that there wasn't any, and 30% indicated that there was. So lack of awareness again around policy programs. So just in summary, so based on the findings of that research, based on the Silver SME EU Interreg project, you know, what we found is that the awareness of the value and potential for enterprises to produce and sell goods and services to and for older people should be communicated and supported by policy, by public policy. In order to bridge that gap between awareness and action, certainly a role for policy exists to support entrepreneurship, support enterprises that supply the silver economy. And this type of support gives rise to prospects of exploiting an untapped silver market and developing enterprises to supply a targeted silver market. So that is a synopsis of the research across those 8 EU regions. If you would like any further information on that research, my email is there. And thank you for your time, and I'll hand you back over to Christina. Christine, I think you're on mute. Yeah.
I'm okay, thank you. So thanks very much for that presentation, Aisling, very interesting. And Ashley will be presenting also tomorrow on another aspect of her work as a keynote participant in tomorrow afternoon's event. And I just found that Interreg Project Predictive was very interesting, and the information provided. We're going to move on now to our business showcase, the slight change in the schedule. So I'm going to invite, if he's here, Manish Ray onto the platform. Is Manish there? Hi, Manish, how are you? Hi, how are you? You're very welcome this afternoon. Manish is involved as an explorer of aging experiences on a quest to inspire generations to visualize longevity dividend as an opportunity. Treading uncharted waters arising from personal experiences, Manish quit his thriving corporate career and added a new dimension of working at interface of future of aging and future world of work as a social entrepreneur. He also invests his time in coaching buddy social entrepreneurs. I'm going to leave you now to talk about your project, Manish, which is Unbox Wellbeing India. So you're very welcome today. Thank you.
Manish, we can't hear you very well.
Better now?
Yeah, I think the mic needs to be a little bit closer to your mouth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right. Thank you, Christine, for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here, and it's a pleasure. And thank you to the Dublin City University to give us the opportunity to be here, and Christine and team, and also all those who are at the back end. A big shout out to them, and a thank you to all of them. With that, I'll just give you a view of how I'm going to take through the presentation. Keep it on the time. Basically, just give a picture on the last 5 years after moving from the corporate world into the social sector. And it was a conscious decision to move into the aging sector. So in that approach, basically, what an opportunity to work on, connect with various diverse older people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Through the survey that I had done across the city, and also created a network of a blueprint for the network of daycare centers across another city in the east of India. And in addition to that, I was able to implement a low-cost model in my own NGO. That was what I was working on for the loneliness of the older people at that time. So through that journey, some of the things that I learned on ground, I just want to bring to your view as I share about Unbox Wellbeing and the next journey that I'm on right now. So the on-ground solutions, basically, that I was observing and I was getting exposed to even with the certain startups, the appropriateness of the solutions, how they are getting connected with the demographic of aging population. Certain elderly people were openly challenging our own solutions, saying that the deficit mindset doesn't work. One size doesn't fit all. And the two kids are unique, but after 60 plus, suddenly we have a one size fit all solution. So that, and then the value of the older people. Doesn't matter where they reside, there is a value in the older people. This is something that I take away from my corporate life. And so many layoffs that have happened. So the value in the people is important. The killer, I would say, I'll use the word killer here on to emphasize the point, saying that when we ask the youngsters, when we're interacting with them, where we find the older people, they ended up talking about old age homes. We all know about the mental picture that people talk about, like no older person with a stick. That is predominantly the image that was being showcased, given back to us from the younger people. So these are the things that got me thinking while I was working on the ground. So we have systems of silos across our generations, and these silos actually keep following me, I guess, from the corporate days even now. So what we have seen is the vertical, verticals within the silo are, the vertical axis is strengthened, that is people within the silos. Yes, they will have obviously be certain differences. That's why we have those generations, but then across, there is a weak link across. The interconnects are getting weaker across the generations. When we ask the question, how many older people of X number of about a decade older are they are friends with, or youngsters they are friends with, rarely come out with any numbers. So this was the point where I started looking at what can be done with this diversity that we have in our hand. The diverse group of people do show certain commonalities, and that is what we started observing when we were working on our projects. So this diversity, and when we look at from a research point of view, the diversity actually is adding fuel to the creativity and the innovation. So that was the part, and nowadays the employers also are trying to invest, are already investing into diverse age groups, because they see that there is a huge economic impact of ageism that is already known as a well-known fact across the ground. So this was the genesis of IGEL, the Intergenerational Equity Collaborative, which is based on reframe, reimagine, and co-create. So how we go about it and what we are doing about it. Just wanted to give a picture as to where we envision ourselves in 2030. We believe on Mahatma Gandhi's quote, and with that quote as our foundation, we see that the intergenerational collaborative, we see that becoming a reality in such a way that the benefits of generational solidarity, innovation, creativity, and meaningful interactions are actually coming out through this whole engagement that we're talking about. And various, different groups of people, individuals are all coming out through this. The students, educational institutions, the older people, the citizens, the research institutions, as well as the companies and the startups across the globe are collaborating to contribute to the expansion of the business of aging and future of aging. This is what we are headed towards from our journey. So within this solution, basically, what we talk about, it's the individuals engaged in this framework are connected on a common purpose. And through this purpose, we are actually able to take them forward in the journey. And why we call them individuals? Because this is the nature of the beast, I would call it here. As I see it on the ground, we have been successful in keeping these generations separate for whatever reasons. But now that we are at a stage where the generations have come to the office, but the generations are not existing at home. So now we need to learn how to work at office when we're not getting that exposure at home. So we have the exposure and the challenges at office with the generation. So that is what we need to learn how to work together over there. So the IGEL system basically is a for-purpose system. That is how it is based on. And everybody involved in this has a shared purpose. The larger purpose that they're connected to is the reason to strengthen the business and the future of aging. And through this, we unbox the well-being for all. That is what is the unbox well-being that we are going after. In this system, currently, we work with local institutions, basically the home for the aged and the education institutions. Our next step is the industry, work in progress over there. And previously, I had worked with certain government organizations, so we'll be going towards that subsequently. So we want to strengthen this area with respect to the education institutions and the home for the aged over here. With that, I'll just take a few minutes or maybe a minute or so over here to share a very high level on the learnings actually from this intergenerational system. Basically, show it in a very simplified way in a three-step process. So the younger, the Mohawk is a younger person and the older person is the person who's trying to communicate. So when we're trying to bring the students and the older people together, we never openly gave the students any indication as to what we expect from them. We just wanted to see what happens next. And we were just telling them, this is the approach, that this is what you are going to experience. So the older people here are that they were experiencing, going to connect with, or were based out of an old age home, the home for the aged, the terminology is India. And they had different socioeconomic backgrounds, and they had very limited educational background, and obviously from diverse parts of the country. So that means different languages. So the students basically we were able to see the unconscious bias coming in from both the age groups. I myself, when I got into this space, I didn't know then, I learned it later, that I also experienced ageism. And I still see that when I go outside and work with a particular crowd of people. So that is basically day in the life. So we learn and move on and try to see how we can educate people. So the education part is on the younger crowd. So then assumptions were high on the youngsters saying that, we know better over here. I said, okay. But then one thing was there. There was this initial apprehension as to what they are getting into. So that is where the crowd that was coming in was much lower compared to where they were early in different setups. But then through the word of mouth, we started receiving so many different students that we had to put a cutoff saying that beyond this, we're not going to take anymore. And then when we got them to the place and they started connecting with the older people, their confidence was high because they knew exactly what solution that they would like to give it to the older people. And that's where everything fell apart. And that's where the whole thing fell apart. And the reality check came in, and it was a pure disaster. Once through the reflections, they got looking into these aspects, and frequencies started matching, and the solutions became more presentable over there. And people started enjoying the whole journey. A quick picture on what work we are talking about. The left side is the valuing the older people. So what they do at the home, the output is there in those flowers that they have created. The right side is basically co-creation. The older people working together on the ground with the youngsters. The bottom picture is basically the friendships that are developed. So way forward is basically support from the academia to further develop the idea, collaboration to enhance global exposure for the students, and other options that we can look at is break into the India market. If there is an on-ground that is needed, we are here to look at from the product market fit or from a background experience, the real environment where we can look at readiness, acceptance, and experience. Thank you. With that, I conclude.
Super, Manish. Thank you so much for that. I really like the idea of linking in with academia, of course. It's one of the key tenets of the age-friendly university principles. So thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. Our next business showcase is Regis Takaratu, who's been working for most of his career for a private sector organization. Since several years, he's part of Testa Chat's Association Ensuring Consumers Protection. Through personal experience, Regis has learned the benefits of intergenerational home sharing solutions. They can help elderly people, making them stay longer at their homes in good conditions and improving their quality of life. That's why he decided to promote the concept of intergenerational home sharing. And in 2009, he founded One Toit, Two Ages, One Roof, Two Generations in Belgium. Since then, he is president of the association and is actively involved in its development with a group of motivated people working for the organization. Thank you so much for joining us today, and dying to hear more about what you're doing. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon from Belgium. I will share my screen. So as you said, I will speak about Un Toit Deux Âges. So Un Toit Deux Âges is a non-profit intergenerational home sharing organization, and it means one roof, two generations. So the goal of Un Toit Deux Âges is to put seniors and students together in a real win. It's a real win-win solution. So how it works? It's quite simple. Un Toit Deux Âges is in the middle. We are contacted by some seniors. They know us via our website or via communication we make with the cities, and we work a lot with the social services from the cities. So we contact them. We just try to know what they exactly want, what is their objective, why they want to have a student at home. After some students connect us too, and they know us via the universities, via the website, and via diverse ways. So we see all the students and to understand why they want to live with an old people, what is their project, and so on. And if we think we've we found two profiles that could match, we organized their meeting. And if they both agree, we sign with them a contract, giving all the what to do, what they should respect, and so on when they live together. So in fact, we are just looking for people, discussing with them to know what they want to do, and after we are still there to make sure that they respect all what they say they would do, because our goal, of course, is that this intergenerational home sharing is a real good solution for both of them. So in fact, we have, of course, an impact on seniors. If they have somebody at home, they can have a little bit of help. They can sometimes get a small amount of money, but the most important is that they are not alone anymore. That they can share activities with the young people, and that's very important. And we also discovered a very important motivation is that, in fact, old people need some help, of course, but they are really enthusiastic helping young people, because in big cities, it's of course quite difficult to find a cheap place to live. And so they want to get some help, but they also, it's really very important for them to help these young students. So for the students, of course, it's a good way to get a cheap place to live. And they also are, the ones that contact us are also interested in helping people. You have to know that we have more or less 80% of our seniors and our students that are ladies. I don't know why exactly. For the ladies, I can understand because they live longer than men, but that's the same for the students. Of course, that's our main target, but we help the families of, if you have old parents, you are really happy to know that somebody is there, somebody is living close to your parents, and that in case of trouble, they can help, and they can warn any doctor or whatever. So it's really important. And we also see that when people are alone, sometimes they are not their intellectual capacity are decreasing because they are not doing a lot of things. And of course, when there is somebody at home, it's really different. And we also help, I think, globally the society, because when somebody has got a student, he can stay at home longer, and of course it costs less to the social insurance in terms of specialized houses for old people. So it's a real win-win solution, not only for senior and student, but also for family, and more globally for our countries. Un Toit deux Âges is active in Belgium, but okay, Belgium is a small country, but with two languages, and we have some regional governments. So for the time being, we are only active in the south part of Belgium, in the French-speaking part, with 10 employees and 4 volunteers. So it's starting to be important for a non-profit. In terms of matches, so you can see evolution since the beginning of our activity. So until 2009 until 2019, it's always increased. Of course, in 2020, we faced the COVID, and it was quite a difficult period for us, because some seniors wanted to be really safe and didn't want to have any students. Some students went back home. It was a really difficult period. So it's the first year where our figure decreased, but, and that's very important, we had a little decrease, but in that period, the matches who stayed together had a really incredible experience. They were together for more than 2 months, with, I would say, almost alone in that flat. And for a lot of seniors and students too, of course, it was a real great experience too. They really shared activities, and it avoided a complete loneliness for people that could have been alone in their flat. So it was a real success with students that were much more present than in the normal life when they go to the university. So it's okay, figures are decreasing, but the real impact we had was really increased thanks to that COVID. But I hope it will be it won't be the same for in the next months. In terms of finance, what is very interesting is that as you can see, more or less 40% of our turnover is coming from the membership fees. We've got some public funds, we've got some almost 20%, 27% in employment aids, and small revenues. And what we really need to increase is in fact partnership. As I told you, social insurances are making a lot of savings thanks to our activities, and what we intend to do in the future, in the coming months or year, is to maybe to share part of the benefit with the insurance company. So our goal is really to increase this partnership part, because we really want the end users, so seniors and students, to have a really limited fee, because we want a lot of people, that the maximum of people can benefit from our activities. So our target is really to improve this partnerships. And finally, and it's quite short, we've got we face some challenges. Juridical and financial differences in the country. I told you that between North and South, it's not the same thing. So we are working with some lawyers to develop our activities in the Flemish-speaking part of the country. So that will be for next year. We intend to develop the partnerships, and I already discussed about it. We are thinking about digitalization. Today, students as senior can put their can ask for ask to be a member of Un Toit Deux Âges via our website. We are testing with some partners a digital offer. Our goal is not to be the mythic of seniors and students, but to maybe be already present on a platform to help us to create matches. But when we discuss with the users, for them, it's very important to maintain this human contact. We are not just selling any goods on the web, but we are having strong social relationship with our members. So digitalization could be a part of the solution, but not, from my point of view, the complete part. And of course, what is very important is to communicate again, because each time it's not an easy decision for all people to open his house to somebody that is a youngster, a young one. And so we always have to communicate by different ways to convince people that it's a real solution, and we are convinced it's a real good solution, a win-win solution. And that's what we have to do to go on to continue developing our activity. That's it for me, and thanks a lot.
Oh, many thanks for that. It's a really interesting and innovative project. I'd love to see more of those around the university sector in Ireland, because we're so short of accommodation for students in particular. And I think that whole intergenerational aspect is really, really important. So many thanks for that. So our next presenter is going to be Lisa Papp. Lisa's online there. And Lisa's the founder of Walk with Path and is in charge of business development, strategy and partnership. Lisa holds a BSc in Human Biology from King's College London and double masters in Innovation Design Engineering from Imperial College London and the Royal College of Art. Lisa founded Walk with Path in 2014, based on her developments during innovation design engineering and her personal experience in Parkinson's suffered by her father. The company launched its first product in 2017, Pathfinder, a visual cueing shoe attachment to help those with Parkinson's. The second product, a haptic feedback insole to improve balance, Pathfeel, is in development. So Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that introduction.
So Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think Gavin is going to share the video. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. As mentioned, I'm the founder of Walk with Path, a startup based in London, and we're working in the area of healthy aging. Next slide, please. So we were founded in 2014 with a mission to revolutionize the mobility and falls prevention space by using active wearables. We launched our first product called Pathfinder in 2017, aimed at helping people with Parkinson's be able to walk better. Products that include sensors and data insights for physical and mental well-being. So within that, we're dedicated to diabetes and the aging area in general. Next slide, please. So the main problem that we seek to tackle is the ability to stay healthy as we age. And most of the conditions that we're dealing with tend to affect people in later life. And disability and aging in general is one of the main things that can lead to being less active, basically at that later phase in life. So inactivity is a global public health concern. Aging causes a rapid decline in physical activity, which can lead to loss of mobility and independence. Prevalence of inactivity in Europe ranges quite widely, from 5% in Sweden to nearly 30% in Portugal. But all of that leads to an increased risk of overweight and obesity, non-communicable diseases, and other chronic conditions in general. Next slide, please. So the addressable market that we're tackling is diabetes, but more specifically diabetes and neuropathy. Neuropathy is when you have a lack of sensation on the soles of as they walk, and this can lead to a lot of instability. It also leads to a higher risk of developing ulcers, which can then in turn lead to amputations. In terms of the older people, again, we're looking at risk of thing, and a large percentage of older people also are at risk of having peripheral neuropathy simply due to aging. Next slide, please. Okay, so our solution is based on smart insoles and services. So when we talk about insoles, basically that is what they are. It's hardware that looks like such as pressure sensors that can understand the distribution of pressure during the scopes, and there's temperature sensors. There's also vibration motors. Vibration motors have been found that when basically they provide output to the sole of the foot, they can help to improve balance. We currently have a clinical trial happening in that area in people with diabetic neuropathy, where we actually see an improvement in balance and in other gait parameters when activating this vibration. In addition to the hardware, these insoles are Bluetooth enabled, and this means that they communicate with a smartphone that gathers data, and then that again communicates to a web-based platform for clinicians and an app for the end user, where it's possible to see aspects around gait and actually gather insights, as well as looking at, for instance, a falls risk index that we have developed. Next slide, please. Okay, so our core product is called PathFeel, and that's this insole, and that enables remote patient monitoring, telemedicine, and balance and mobility intervention. So it's based on patented vibrations, the IMU and other sensors. It has an app for either platform, iOS or Android, and then the dashboard that is online. The market for this is as a mobility aid for people with sensory loss more widely. So that's people with diabetes, people in the aging category who might be frail and having sensory loss for other reasons, and a host of other reasons that can lead to this, such as having undergone chemotherapy or, for instance, multiple sclerosis. In terms of the techniques, we're focused on real-time digital biomarkers, and we use pressure as one of those. We're also focused on gait analysis because we know that there are specific aspects of gait that changes as we age and that are indicative of having a higher falls risk. All of that aids to create much better patient awareness. In regulatory terms, this product will be CE marked and launched on the market next year as a Class 2 medical device. And as I mentioned, we have clinical trials with Manchester Metropolitan happening at the moment, and we hope to also extend that into an aging population later down the line. Next slide, please. So one of the reasons we're looking at balance improvements is because it's closely linked to falls. So in the literature, there's actually quite a lot of evidence around vibrations impacting balance, which is why we've been testing that as well. And in addition to that, falls can be multifactorial, but balance is one of the key intrinsic parameters that can impact falls. So according to NICE, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence in the UK, it's actually possible to reduce falls by potentially more than 50% by improving balance as well as muscular strength. Next slide, please. So our dashboard is called Path Insight, and this is what it would look like for the clinician. So here they can see the data from the insoles, and they're able to personalize metrics. So we've developed this dashboard with a lot of clinician input, as well as the input, which is the American Association for Retired People, which is one of our partners in the US market. This means that we have worked with a range of different people, such as GPs, physiotherapists, neurologists, etc., to identify what sort of parameters they're keen to see, and support for clinical decision making. And this means we have, for instance, validated functional tests, such as a 10-meter walk test that people can do to be able to analyze their function remotely. Next slide, please. So in terms of our markets, we're really focused on the medical area at the moment, but in time, we also hope to move more into wellness, still staying in the active aging and well-being space, as well as sports and fitness. So over time, we want to impact people also at a younger stage so that we can influence activities and the approach of staying healthy as we move into aging. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for listening, and I would welcome any etc. at the panel later this evening. Thank you.
Many thanks, Lisa. Very interesting and innovative work. I think it could make a real impact on society. I'm delighted to see you're working with the University of Queensland because it's one of our age-friendly universities in Australia. So thank you for that presentation.
Great, thanks.
You're very welcome. Our next presenter is Philip Hogan, and Philip is the founder and CEO of Cliffrun Media and Health, a technology company focusing on solutions for older people and creator of the Acorn age-friendly smart tablet. Philip has over 28 years of experience in the ICT sector. He has led global sales from startups to 100 million plus revenue, led marketing, engineering services, and legal teams. Philip holds a number of non-executive advisory and board seats in the telecom, medtech, industry, and educational sectors. So Philip, you're very welcome to join us this afternoon.
Hi, Christine. Thank you very much to all the team at DCU AFU for the opportunity to speak today. Before I jump into slides, I thought maybe we'd just show a quick video, and Garvin, if possible, you might be able to play that video for us now.
The digital divide has always been a reality, but its ongoing impact was brought into stark relief by the pandemic.
When we paused the face-to-face programs, we realised quite quickly when we tried to get those participants online that the majority of them did not have a device, did not have any internet.
Digital poverty is hitting a lot of people across this country, and the biggest challenge would be to break down the barriers of the fear of turning on a computer.
Particularly like the older generation, I suppose for 5 or 6 months we're told don't go out of your home, you know, stuff like that.
It's a bit like the old thing of the 18th and 19th century where we had to combat illiteracy. We now have to combat digital illiteracy.
The world is technological now. Everything is technology. It's no longer a choice. It's not recreational. It's an essential.
Organisations now had to reimagine and adapt if they were going to reach the isolated and disadvantaged within the communities.
The nature of engagement across all public services has very much changed in terms of it is through online facilities, online platforms.
There is a digital group which came as part of the COVID response, working to try and upskill and make people digitally literate.
The technology companies need to reach out to older people to make their products accessible, reliable, engaging for older people. They need to understand that older folk approach things in a different way.
Quite often the people who benefit best from our programs are those who are struggling. So they didn't have the confidence to use a device. So we needed a very, very easy to use device.
At Acorn, we'd long since recognised that age-friendly design was required to bridge the gap, and had created an easy-to-use, highly accessible smart tablet.
The design of them, which involved older people and consulted with older people, I think was great, because it meant you started out from a good space.
The way you can change it around is nice, and I suppose working with somebody on a one-to-one, you can set it up for their preferences. I think that's great.
The Acorn, it makes it simpler, because there's less options and less things can go wrong.
What we found really good with the Acorn was the mobile data was inbuilt, so you didn't have this thing where you turn on the tablet and it wasn't working, and it can lead to frustration, so we found that really, really beneficial.
This smart tablet became the conduit for the delivery of innovative, inspiring, effective online programs that reconnected people and communities.
The difference that's made to our service users, to our residents, is that they've been able to contact their families, and the families have been able to contact them. That was primarily so they were able to have like FaceTime.
We've had a participant on the programme that couldn't read or write, so we were able to get her up on the programme by speaking to her over the phone, by giving her the colour codes of the different options. This was online by using the Acorn device.
This way has allowed us to connect to people who had already left groups because they felt unsafe at night or a disability, and now they're able to link in from their own sitting room.
We have developed an age-friendly calendar of activities, so again that will promote content, whether that's from Bealtaine, the libraries are hosting events, the arts, cultural events, whatever events that are tailored towards an older adult in Tipperary can be showcased and promoted through directly as a device and a link onto your Acorn device.
We've had people go on programmes who haven't spoken to anybody, to a person, for days, and the delight on their face when they come on Zoom and see other people is actually quite magic, to be honest.
Thank you to the organisations and communities who continuously strive to make a difference for all of us. We at Acorn are dedicated to developing solutions which promote social inclusion, health and well-being for all.
What Acorn has done has opened the door for people to use tablets in their own home.
I know of a singing group online, social group online, and that's just literally meeting to have a chat.
They have their knitting group online, they have a gardening session online, we have chair yoga going on, we've cookery classes lined up as well.
You're bestowing a value on people by saying, of course you can have technology, you can, why not? And then for them to experience success in using it.
People who are in their 70s, 80s and 90s now, I think if they can be given the confidence to know that they can mess with this technology and learn through play, which is perhaps a novel concept for them, but that then you can open up a whole world.
The world has come into them and they are out in the world through this little tablet. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you, Garvin. So I'm going to now quickly share a presentation. And there we go. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see this. So hopefully that gave everybody a brief insight into the importance of technology in the lives of older people, which has been accentuated in the last number of years for all the right reasons. I hate to even mention the word because we're so tired of talking about it, but it has had a net positive impact in terms of accelerating technology adoption, which I think we should acknowledge. And again, I'll just throw up a couple of quick statistics. We're seeing a rapidly aging population, as we know, doubling of the population over 65. One of the previous talkers, I think Melissa, referenced the reduction in or shortage of assisted living care assistance, which is presenting challenges in this environment. But what we have seen in the last number of years is an irreversible change for the positive in terms of technology adoption and the adoption of age tech as a concept and as a market, which is very positive. And I think we're talking about a 35 billion market valuation by 2025. We've been in this business for over 5 years, and we spent considerable amount of time looking at the needs of older people and highlighted these based on our primary and secondary research that health, communication, sustained independence, which could be in the form of transportation, ability to move and get around by oneself, security and a sense of vulnerability and finance were areas of focus as we age. I mean, they're relevant in all aspects of most people's lives, but they are accentuated as we age. And we wanted to build technology that addressed those issues, that was relevant to those life priorities as we move forward, and it wasn't focused on one specific element. To do that, we needed to create a sense of digital independence to begin. We could then, with that sense of digital independence, look at patient care in a virtual context, digital adoption of digital solutions. We could look at assisted living as a concept in terms of all the tools and facets of life that could be there to support us as we age from a digital context. And we could look at community and our sense of involvement. We built our products with 3 principles in mind. How do we make it easy to inform people? How do we make it easy to keep people interactive digitally, both socially and professionally? And how do we make it easy for people to remain involved? If we look at the world in that capacity with technology at the core, we can create a platform that provides a basis for enterprises to provide those solutions and concepts to their clients and maintain that engagement that most enterprises have become familiar with in terms of a younger population and should be concentrating on for a very interested and wealthy older population. With that in mind, we built a number of products. So at our core, you saw a video on the Acorn age-friendly smart tablet, which I'd be delighted to talk to people about offline. But that is at the core, which is a platform that allows older people and people with limited digital exposure at its principle engage the world on their terms. So design for people rather than people having to adopt to design, which can be quite complex depending on your life experience. And then we've layered in the assisted living capabilities, things like how to involve people in menu systems, check-in services, and things that are useful to the assisted living community. And then how do we've built a solution for community engagement. So how communities of users of these tablets can come together with administrative capacity held by one to support the communities of users in a positive environment. And that's been accentuated in the last number of years by organizations who've adopted our technology. And lastly, we built a patient care system for remote monitoring vital signs. We implemented these solutions over the last 2 years, and they've been hugely important as hospitals changed their model of care, where many didn't go into the hospital environment. Having remote care and the ability of patients to be monitored by a clinical team externally proved very valuable. In fact, we had a number of clinical interventions as a consequence of the remote monitoring from our integrated patient care system. So just to reiterate, at the core of what we do is about digital inclusion. Again, I think one of the speakers mentioned the importance of digital inclusion. Everybody should be on the same, have the same rights and engagement potential as others in this world. And if we get that right, we then have the facility to look at digital social tools and all that can come from that, health management and all the capabilities of health, and also importantly, enterprise services. If we've built this platform, we believe we can now drive many enterprise services, many interesting concepts that people will be interested to do. So we look at our journey not starting at any one point, but rather maybe at the beginning when we're independent and supporting a user's engagement through their different life stages as they age. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time today, and I look forward to any comments or questions you may have.
Thanks very much, Philip. It really is, I've seen this firsthand, and it really is a very innovative product. And I think also Louise's point there on your video around digital poverty in particular, it's really highlighted the need for to have these accessible technologies in light of COVID and all that's happened in COVID. So we'll be discussing this probably a bit more. Richard will be hosting this on the panel later on. So I'm just checking because we're a little bit before our time. Our next speaker is our keynote speaker for the circular economy, and Dr. Maurizio Bussola. I'm just checking, he's in the room now today. Oh, yes, great. I see you there, Maurizio. So Maurizio Bussola Dr. Bussola is the lead economist at the Chief Economist Office for South Asia, and has been working on quantitative analysis of economic policy and development with research interests spanning both micro and macroeconomic topics. I saw Maurizio speak 2 years ago now in Bilbao, and I was absolutely blown away by what he said, and it really inspired me to really reach out to him and invite him here today. So I'm so pleased and so delighted you could join us. So the floor is yours there. Thank you.
Sorry, Maurizio, your mic isn't working.
You're muted there.
Not actually muted, but the mic isn't working.
Okay. Hmm.
You may have to check your settings in Zoom. No, sorry, we still can't hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there we go.
All right, good.
Perfect.
And you can see me.
Yep.
Excellent. So let me share my presentation. Okay, one sec. Here we go. Okay. All right. Okay. So now that you can hear me, and that's great. Let me start. So thank you very much for the invitation and for the kind words. You put the bar quite high. I don't know if I can blow away anyone today, but I'll try my best. So this is work that I did together with two of my colleagues, Johannes Kotel and Emily Sinnott, and was focused on Europe and Central Asia. But at the World Bank, we have had a series of reports done on aging in other regions with different emphasis. Europe and Central Asia is one of the fastest aging regions, so it's pretty unique to focus on this region. Let me also say that all the work that we did and I will present, it predates COVID. We look at the long term, so most of the stuff is still quite valid. But let me just very quickly give you a preamble on COVID. So we all know that the mortality rate is as a gradient. Older people are more susceptible to the impact of COVID. But rather than that, I want to focus on one important issue, which is the allocation issue of vaccines. Even in rich countries that have plenty of doses by now, there was at the beginning there was a problem of not sufficient doses and limited the distributional capacity of these doses. And this problem is still quite severe in many developing countries. So the problem is, how does the government decide who gets the vaccine first? And that's a thorny problem. But we have to say that all countries have prioritized the elderly. So that has been an issue that has been resolved in this way in all the countries, and that it's an encouraging sign for aging society. Notwithstanding that older for the government, well, saving an older person means saving a lower number of potential life years, and also potentially less economic wealth. But in the rest of my presentation, I will show that how we can shift our focus about aging economy, especially shifting the focus of the lower economic potential of older individuals. So in the next slide, I'll give you my 4 messages, and I call this everything in one slide. So the first message is the following. In my profession, I'm an economist. In my profession, whenever demography is the focus, there is a sense of something bad is going to happen. Things are shifting slowly. I cite here a great book by Deaton, Nobel Prize winner, which is called The Great Escape. And he alludes to the escape from early death and poverty. So he really paints aging as a triumph, as a conquest, and it is indeed for the individual. However, economists are still really concerned about aging society, and while there are things to be managed, it is not as bad as we often think. So that's the first message. Demography and economics are not enemy, and demography can be is shifting. The second message is really focused on the economy, and the sense that an aging society is destined to be destitute or decrease in importance economically is patently wrong. If you just look at today the society in a snapshot, all the older societies are all the richer society in the world. But I'll give you more evidence that aging is absolutely not a recipe for economic destitution. The third point that I wanted to make is that while it's true that on average we have escaped early death, it's not the case for all of us or for all the people. And the book of Deaton, and as Obama remarked in 2013, is all about inequality. And this is a defining challenge of our time. And aging society risks becoming more polarized, and intergenerational tensions are on the rise. So this is the only really negative the concern that I put on the table on aging society. Finally, just a word on economic policy. I would focus mostly. They have to be shifted from policy that are really only focusing on all the individuals to policies that cover the whole life cycle of individuals, because we're going to have a healthy, prosperous, aging individual only if we have invested in them along the whole life cycle of the individual. So those are my main messages. Let me give you some more details on each of them, starting from the trends on demography. I will spend very little time on this. As I mentioned, the initial concern in the 60s onwards, 70s, 80s was overpopulation, but the exceptional time are really behind us. The world is moving towards a much more stable and balanced demographic structure. Indeed, in the last 100 years, there have been 2 doubling of the world population, but there's not going to be even 1 in the next 100 years, and then we're going to move towards a stable population in a fairly likely scenario. But if overpopulation is not a problem, then the problem is that we're going to be swallowed by a tsunami, a great tsunami, or there will be an age quake. But if you look at the average age and if I didn't show you, I probably you wouldn't guess what is the average age of the person today is just about 33 years, and by the end of the century, it will reach about 41, 42. So it's really not a great tsunami. And if you think of the peak of productivity at current data for an individual is about 35, 37-year-old. So we're not even at the peak yet at the end of the century. Let's move on the second message. There's a lot I can say about fertility policy, longevity policy, but let me move on to my second point on what happens when society age. So the idea that living standards will go down with an aging population is based on two strong and clear ideas that we economists put forward, actually. One is that the dependency rate will go up. What that means is that the number of people beyond 65 that depend on working people below 65 increases, and thus the output that now is produced only by a smaller group and shared by a larger group in per capita terms becomes smaller. So that's kind of easy maths, and everybody kind of agree with that. And the second one is that even not only output per people, but output per worker will also go down because worker age, and when they're older, they become less productive. They are less strong, they are less mentally capable, and so they produce less. Now, the problem is that equating chronological age, the increase of chronological age, with an increase in dependency rate and a decrease in productivity is just plainly wrong. Dependency rate and productivity can be defined differently and are influenced by many factors, not only chronological age. So let me show you, for example, if we define dependency rate in a different way, we define it as adult dependency ratio, which is a ratio of inactive over active in the adult population. So now the definition of active and inactive is not based on being above 65 or below 65, okay? So it's just that if you are active, you're active no matter which age, and if you're inactive no matter which age. So we have removed the chronological age from this picture. If this is a group of countries, Central Europe and the Baltics, and you have the historical data and some projection, if we keep the participation rate as it is currently, okay? So the fact that people at various age participate, and when the age structure changes, this is what happens. And indeed, there is a problem because it seems that the dependency rate goes out. But if we start increasing the activity rate just of female to male, in these countries, there is a bit of a low female to male gap in participation rate. You see that the dependency rate almost becomes flat. If we increase the working life, now instead of retiring at retirement age, people work longer, it actually goes down. And if we converge to the level of these variables that are for one of the best country, which is Iceland, not Ireland, unfortunately, you see that it's actually the dependency rate, adult dependency rate goes down and improves even from current levels. So that's on the dependency rate. On productivity, okay, so there are lots of things here to be said as well. The first one, simple one, is that, okay, if your work is manual, you're aging, you become less strong, and that's hard to contest. But even then, a clear example is grip, hand grips strength. It peaks at 35 in the general population, but when you measure that on the assembly line people, the people at 65 have the same strength as 35. So even that with training is not necessarily a problem. But most of the job today and future will be in services where you don't really use much of physical strength, but more mental strength. What you have is in this graph is brain scans of a group of individuals divided in 3 subgroups of young, old, low performance, and old, high performer. And they all do the same task, which is a memory task. And what this graph shows you is that the young use mainly their left hemisphere and not much at all the right hemisphere. The old that perform not very well in the task also use only the left hemisphere. So in a sense, they're trying to mimic the young, but their processing of the information goes down, so they don't perform very well. And the old high performer instead use bilateralized, that's the term. They use both hemispheres, and then they compensate from a lower processing power with the experience, and they are performing as well as the young. So it's not clear that mental capacity really decreases, rather shifts from fast processing capacity to using other skills in the brain. And the employers are adapting to that. There's a lot of automakers in Germany that are experimenting for a while by now with mixed teams, old and young, and these mixed teams tend to perform better than fully young teams, or for that matter, fully old teams. So again, there's other capacities still that soft skill that are increased with age. The use of speech, language increases. So we can see, we have even data that we show that aging economies are starting to export different products and services, adapting to the comparative advantage of having older individuals. So there is a lot of evidence whereby aging economy are not destined to become poorer than before. The last thing I want to mention is this thing that I painted as a bit of a concern, which is inequality. So this is another research area. We tend to think of aging society as the average, but not looking at the group of people who are old. There is a lot of variation and the interaction between the young generation and old generation. So in a more recent report, we start looking at that, and we find quite a bit of evidence that there is an incidence of the transformation of the labor market, which is much higher on the younger generation than on the old. And this creates, it's one important source of intergenerational tensions. By the way, intergenerational tensions are tensions between groups rather than individuals. And these are the most pernicious type of inequality. Think of group against group, like the whites and black in the US, or Muslim and Hindus in India. These are kind of inequality distributional tensions that threaten the political stability and the social cohesion. So these are important things to be considered. One other aspect of aging and inequality is the fact that the mobility across generation has gone down. There's a series of papers, not just one, by Chetty, who shows this in the US, how the intergenerational mobility has decreased in this country, but also in Europe. And overall, as I said, there is a risk that aging society become more polarized. Let me show you a few statistics, and then I conclude. I said that the transformation of the labor market are more strongly felt by the younger generation. These graphs, two graphs, show two regions in Western Europe and Southern Europe, and is the incidence across different years for different age groups or different cohorts of the number of people that have non-standard type of employment, so part-time or not open-ended type of jobs, temporary jobs, or the Uber kind of jobs. And you see there is an increasing trend, but it's more or less the same for all these different age groups, and it's a little bit stronger in Southern Europe. But when I show this last bit, which is the youngest age group, you see that the incidence is much higher for this group than the others. So they bear the brunt of this labor market transformation. Seen in another way, in terms of growth of their income, this graph shows us also a concerning picture. This is again Southern Europe. You have two groups, and now I paint the generations by the year that they were born, and the lighter colors are the generation born in the 70s. The darker are born in the 80s. Okay, and the left graph shows you the evolution of the income as these cohort age. So they start at 30, 35, and then they age, they go on through their life cycle. What you see on the left is that basically, if you have only high school, your income doesn't really, there is almost no premium to experience. So your income remains constant, no matter if you were old generation or new generation. When you have a college graduation, you are a college graduate, so you have tertiary education. What happens is you see a flattening of the gradient of experience. So older generation, they were starting and enjoying fairly strong increase in their income, but this is flattening as we get towards the younger generation. So that means that basically there is again a reduction of the premium of experience for you. So not only young generation are more exposed to non-permanent jobs, but also their growth trajectory of their income is compromised. This last one, and then I'm done. This last one is also interesting. I mentioned now the disparities among cohorts born earlier on from more younger cohorts, but also within cohort, things have been changing. So now imagine that you were just comparing yourself with peers of the same age. Everybody of this, when you enter the labor market, you get older. In your group, the inequality expands. So as the group ages, there is an increase of within group inequality. But what this graph shows the level of this within group inequality for different cohorts, for 3 countries. Okay, so take the cohort of my father, born about in the 30s, and the inequality among his peers when he was about 40, so after 10, 15 years entering in the labor market, they were experiencing among their peers the inequality of a country such as Japan. Then a generation, not really of my daughter, but a little older of my daughter, is experiencing a completely different type of inequality within his peers. It is as if they live in a different countries, not anymore at the Japan level of inequality, but the inequality of a country in South America that tend to be much more unequal, like Chile. So this means that basically the younger generation start off already before they enter the labor market with much more inequality than the previous generation, which means that there is passage, a dynastic passage of some people in the young generation are really already have very good position and some have very bad position. So this is what is concerned. So I don't need to repeat my points, which were the one that I made before. So I just flash my last slide there for you to read, and I stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maurizio. That is fantastic. Just as inspirational as the talk I saw in Bilbao. And I just noticed there's a comment from Melissa Mitchell, our keynote earlier on the future of aging. And she's delighted that she said, I've been waiting a long time to hear economists offer a more accurate approach to the dependency ratio and show the fallacy of age-based dependency ratio. Absolutely, that's what we need to be doing. So thank you so much for that presentation. I'm not sure to stay for the panel discussion, but we will be having a panel discussion now. So
I'll stay.
You stay, that's great. So the next part of our program is the panel discussion. It's going to be moderated by Richard Adler. He will also be joined by Maura Allen, and Maura Allen is the co-founder and international coordinator of the Pass It On network and lead for European and international affairs for the French Association Hold Up. The PION, Pass It On network, is an accredited member of the United Nations Open-Ended Working Group on Aging. So we'll open up the floor now there, Richard, and let you get the ball rolling and just have it to start your discussion there with the panelists. I mean, they've all been so fantastic. I don't envy you this job to moderate this discussion. So there you go.
Hi, well, I've been looking forward to this part of the discussion. This is, I mean, there's been so many interesting observations and ideas that I think there's a lot to talk about. Since Moira has joined us, and Moira happens to be a friend, I'm been involved with the Pass It On network for a number of years. Moira, maybe just say a little bit more about what Pass It On network is and what its goals are.
Richard, the Pass It On network is a very exciting network. It's made up of grassroots, at the grassroots level, of people around the world who are adapting to this whole phenomenon of a longer life. How to live it, what to do, and how to make the best of it. I think that in a nutshell is what it is. And most of our members have their own organizations with their own network. So we collect individuals who then go out, spread the word, and inspire their own people.
Thank you. And I must say, as I've been working locally here in Silicon Valley on digital inclusion, one of the exciting things has been working with PION on a kind of a global view of digital inclusion. We've started a coalition of people all over the world who are facing the same issue. So it's, you know, it's a chance to think globally and act locally.
Exactly.
So I want to start out with a question, and maybe this is for everybody, but maybe particularly our economists, because we've sort of had the view from the economists, and then we've had a view from entrepreneurs and activists who are working on projects. But I remember a number of years ago hearing a presentation from the Commissioner on Aging for the United States, and she was saying that she thought there had been quite a number of attempts to repackage aging into sort of make it a positive thing, you know, successful aging, productive aging, happy aging. But her view was that however you tried to package it, it was essentially bad news. And that she thought, and so after her talk, I asked her, I said, well, what's a better way to frame it? And she thought rather than trying to rebrand aging, we should be talking about longevity, and that longevity was good news because that really stressed, and somebody said that, I think it was just now Maurizio, that you've got to look at not just at the end of life and just start with people at the end of life, but you've got to look at the sort of the whole life cycle. So I'd just be interested if there are comments about sort of the term aging and whether that's one that you think we can reframe and rebrand, or do we need a different approach like longevity? Melissa, maybe ask you to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that. I think it's a great question. The Global Coalition on Aging has been in existence for 11 years now, and I think we ask ourselves that question every few months. And lots of efforts have been made to sort of rebrand aging, because aging carries a certain stigma to it. When we look at it, longevity, of course, is this celebration, longer lives. But if we want to be accurate, we want to talk about aging, because aging is that combination of longevity plus the fact that we're having declining birth rates, and therefore there are fewer young people to sort of meet up to the increase in older people. So there are more older people in society than younger society, and so that is how we describe the aging of society. So, which is why we've been sticking with the Global Coalition on Aging for all of our existence, because we just believe that's accurate in terms of how we frame it. And so we've been doing the reversed approach. As opposed to rebranding aging, we've been trying to make sure that aging is seen as an opportunity and more in a positive light.
I was spotlighted, so I guess I need to speak now. That's okay. So no, I agree with what Melissa just said. There is a fundamental issue when we talk about aging of distinguishing the concept at the individual level and at the societal level. So for an individual, I mean, if I ask any of you, do you want to age? Everybody will say, yes, of course, I want to age for a long time. But if we look at the society, the problem is that you can have aging from the bottom and aging from the top, as economists say. From the bottom means that, as Melissa was saying, you have less fertility, less birth, and so the young are in numbers are diminishing, and aging from the top means that people just live longer and longer. Now, the combination of both is quite good, but in my area that I was describing, East Asia Europe and Central Asia and Eastern Europe, is actually mostly aging comes for the society, but not the individual. There has been a drop in fertility rate, but not much longevity. People are dying young, but if you look at the composition of the society, because you have many less young people, it seems that the society is aging, but individuals are not. So it's the worst combination. So that's a difficult. I use a lot of words to say something that seems simple, but it is. I agree with you. There is that problem. The second thing is this dependency that I also emphasized. The idea of aging is that there is a group of people that depend, but we never are concerned about the young people. The young people are as dependent as the old, and there is a whole society, institutions, school that are dedicated to make them, to invest in them and make them better as they grow up. The society doesn't seem to have a space for the older group, which can still contribute a lot to society, but mainly is you're on your own. You either have saved and have your own pension, but otherwise the society doesn't really know what to do with you because you are dependent. So there are these two issues that are complicated. That's what I have to say.
So anybody else wanted to comment on aging versus longevity and sort of how we grapple with this notion of aging? And, you know, the sort of the flip side of that is ageism, I guess, which is the sort of negative perceptions of age.
I just have a comment, Richard. And, you know, yesterday, Professor de Miguel spoke to this point, and that was the whole issue of what biotechnology is doing now to the whole perception of aging. And I think you've got the barrier that's being lifted now, because people are starting to see that they're, you know, just take, for example, there's this development now where you can replace parts of the spine, which is just, you know, there are all kinds of positive developments in that field. And I think that's done and will do quite a lot to expand the horizon of a healthy lifespan. And I think that is important.
I remember there was a paper I remember reading a few years ago that looked at life expectancy at age 65, which has been increasing, at least in the US, maybe not everywhere in the world. And so the authors were arguing that if you looked at where old age is in relation to your expected remaining life, that it was actually that the number of older people was actually falling if you looked at the growth in life expectancy at age 65. So, you know, Maurizio, I think this is what you were saying about demographics is not destiny, that aging is a malleable fact, that there are a number of different ways of looking at it. And it seems like one thing that is really clear is just looking at a chronological age is not so helpful.
No. Absolutely. But I think also just that older people themselves are just, you know, grabbing life and carrying on with life. And I think that the whole transmission of that image is so much more positive today. Well, not all over the world, but I mean, certainly in Europe and in the States, from what I've seen, there are just more and more people aging in a healthy way and embarking on all sorts of interesting projects. And that turns things upside down.
So that raises another question I want to ask, and this is for everybody. The word silo has come up a number of times, and the necessity of breaking down silos. Manish, I think you were talking about silos. It often strikes me when I participate in events like this that we kind of are talking to ourselves, that there is this fairly small band of people who share an interest in aging, but it's very hard to break out of that and get into the dialogue in the larger society. That it's an issue which sort of remains on the periphery of the social agenda and the economic agenda, even though, you know, the data is pretty strong that there's a lot here. So, you know, maybe start with Melissa and then ask the others about, you know, whether, and Manish, I'd like to hear from you too about sort of how do we break out of the silos that we find ourselves in?
Richard, it's a great question. And I think what we have seen over the past several years is that more and more people are coming to this conversation. So even today, I think I see a couple of people that I've met in the past, but I haven't met so many of you today. So I'm really pleased that there's a new audience, there are new experts that I'm going to get to follow up with after this conversation. I wish we were in person because then we could just chat. But I do think that the universe of organizations, of types of organizations that are engaged in this aging dialogue is growing. And as you mentioned, aging touches on so many things across society in terms of how we adapt our businesses and how we think of government policy. And so it's that lens. It's not a topic by itself. It is an issue that touches every part of our society. So, you know, it is the lens through which our policymakers and our business leaders should be making decisions. And so I am encouraged by the increase in the conversations and more people who are being brought to it, but of course we can do better.
Yeah. Aisling, you just were talking about the study that you had been doing about awareness of silver economy. And what I took away is it's still not a very widely understood term. And I'm just wondering kind of your reflections on those findings and whether you have any thoughts about, you know, how do we break through beyond that, those silos we're in?
Yeah, okay. So I suppose like aging is something that is coming. It's coming faster to some countries more than others, but it is coming for everybody. You know, one of those charts I showed, you know, just certain countries in Europe, you know, are aging faster than others. But I suppose when you think about the climate summit in Glasgow today, and it's a meeting of world leaders, you know, something similar will happen with aging. You know, it's something that's coming. It's something we're going to have to deal with and prepare for. You know, from a pensions perspective, you know, I mean, looking at it from an Irish perspective, you know, pensions is something that, you know, is something that has been talked about, but government is not really doing anything about. but it's something that, you know, we'll have to do sooner rather than later. Just in terms of the research, yes, definitely a complete lack of awareness. And as I mentioned, you know, people have an idea about what they think the silver economy is, but when you actually explain it to them, they're surprised, and it's not what they actually thought it was. And I suppose one of the key findings from that study is that I suppose there's going to need to be a stronger role for public policy and policymakers to try and ensure that that message gets out there, that companies are aware of the silver economy, its opportunities and its potential. And, you know, and there's one other point around aging, you know, aging is not just looking at those who are over 50 who are vulnerable. It's those who are over 50 and who are active, those who are over 50 and who are dependent. So there's different groupings there. And again, I think it's just that awareness piece about making enterprises and companies aware that that market opportunity is there.
Very good. Anybody else want to comment on this term silver economy and whether that is one that resonates?
Just maybe jump in for a second, because it's for me, it's been very interesting how the perception of the silver economy. My background is actually telecommunications, and spent most of my career working with telecoms companies across the world. And so when I jumped into the aging space, and there's a distinct perception that it's not a real problem, or at least it wasn't in technology terms, that really it was a question of, you know, an ambivalence of that particular sector, the community unwilling to engage in the technology rather than the technology being fit for purpose or designed appropriately. And I think while we see this tsunami of activity, you know, to Aislinn's point, there's going to be a crisis point in terms of the aging population. The reality is that today's older population is at crisis point in relation to adoption of certain technologies. Many are lucky, and so the danger is I'm generalizing, but there are many in the current population that require the services more than ever. The aging population that's to follow will be, at least in the sector of technology, will probably be more comfortable with adopting newer technologies because they come from that space. Whereas today's population, I think, need and require considerable help, and for the economy outside of the aging population to understand that this is a real problem, if that makes sense. So we've seen the change, though. I think this is what the last 2 years have brought. They've brought an awareness by the outside world to this clique of ages, people involved in aging, that actually, wow, there's a billion people here that need to be considered more than they ever have, and that it's a potentially lucrative economy if they understand how to work with it.
Yeah. So we are unfortunately fast running out of time. I knew this would go by very fast, but I'd like to bring in our entrepreneurs, Manish and Regis and Lisa as well. And just one, it strikes me that, you know, these last 2 years have changed a lot. I mean, COVID sort of came out of nowhere, at least for most of us. I think there were a few people who saw it coming, but most of us didn't. And, you know, the whole world has been affected, and it's changed a lot of things. But I'd like to just maybe hear from our entrepreneurs as they're kind of on the front lines, you know, developing what I think are all really, you know, brilliant ideas. But how would you say your work has either been advanced or challenged by what we've dealt with in the last 2 years with COVID, and particularly its impact on the older population? Maybe Manish, start with you, then Regis and Lisa. I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, challenge, yes, for sure. And that actually created the opportunity for us to rethink as to what exactly is the next way forward when we come out of it. So to connect with so ours is a touch point solution. Basically, we have to go and meet with the older people. So now we are looking at a way that we can use the technology to not just connect locally, but we can connect anywhere with a slight twist in our way of approach itself. So that is the way that we have taken it forward. So the challenge was always there. It was actually at a standstill, I would say. And then one thing led to another, because it's not just the older people, we are also working with the students. And the students were in a complete flux as to how their academics are going to be, when their exams are going to be. So it was mostly unclear and unknown to everybody. So and that was the two dimensions that we were working with. And 1 minute, if I may, or maybe less than that, on the generational front, I would say that, within the generations also there is a challenge. It's not just that, outside the generations we have a silo, within the generations also we have that. So where I come from is whenever I go to these awareness sessions, I always look for what is that actionable I need to take back from there that I can work immediately and do that. So that actionable awareness is something that I would say is needed. And one thing is we may need to start looking at just walking away from the generational classification when we are doing this kind of work. And look at individuals and look at what attributes are common across the generations and classify them accordingly. And that work is already going on, and TikTok and all those people have already invested in that area. So we can look at that. And then the segmentation is changed. So the generation itself, that is basically needed for statistics, but this is needed for this kind of positive work that we are trying to bring to the market.
Manish, that is truly a radical thought, that we don't meet on the grounds of our age, but just on our common humanity. That's an interesting idea. Regis, you were talking about how your enterprise was affected by COVID, and the numbers were affected, but also for the people who were sharing space, it really meant something. How do you see this going forward? You're muted, Regis.
Yes, thank you. So in fact, so people had this experience, and a lot of people, old people, were so alone during the COVID that for us, it's a good opportunity to explain them that it's really a good experience to have a student at home, that in case of any trouble, they are not alone. And I think that people are starting to understand. So, of course, as long as the vaccine was not in, it was very difficult because some people were afraid. And okay, it could be a good idea, but I don't want to get this famous COVID. So I think that things are evolving slowly, but evolving, and people see, okay, I don't want anymore to have this this period to be in my flat alone, and could be this intergenerational home sharing could be a solution. But it's always the same, and we have the experience even before COVID, people say, oh, that would be a very good idea, I'd like to have a young at home, but okay, I will do it. And if nobody is pushing them, in fact, they won't do it, or they will wait. I have one of my collaborators that had a very funny story. He was invited by an old lady. She was 99. And so they had a discussion, and she said, oh, that's very interesting. I will do it when I will be old. So, yeah, what can you do? So in fact, it's really so it's really positive for people, but the best way to communicate is not COVID. The best way is how to say in English, I don't know, but people, if you know somebody who has a student at home, you can trust this person. And we really have to communicate from people to people, and that's the best way to put confidence in that home sharing activities, and to increase the number of people who benefit from that. So COVID is a tool, but that won't be the magic one.
Okay. At least we haven't heard from you, so let me give you probably what will be close to our last word. So just reflecting on, what your last year or 2 years have been like.
Yeah.
You dealt with this.
Yes, thank you for that question. So we create medical devices. So I think there's been both challenges and also some positives that came from COVID. Some of the challenges have been that we do clinical trials. That hasn't really been possible to execute in the framework of COVID and with lockdowns, etc., etc. I think also the people that we tend to work with tend to be older, and hence they've also been just more hesitant perhaps in going out even when it became possible. So a lot of our work is going to clinics like falls clinics and hospitals to do demos, etc., which hasn't really been so possible. So that's been a big challenge. But saying that, I think that something positive COVID has brought for us is this fact that remote monitoring is much more on the table now. So this idea of not necessarily going to see your GP or another physician or clinician, but rather submit data online, submit things is actually something we've had reported a lot in some of the conversations we've had with staff from the NHS in England, for instance, that people are now starting to email things, questions, photos, concerns. So there's a much more adoption of those types of things, which I think fits very well with where we need to go on that level going down the line. So that in itself, I think, is really important. I noted before you said the fact that just looking at chronological age is not so helpful. That's also something that we are working on in terms of establishing indices to understand people's risks of, for instance, a fall, not necessarily based on age, but based on how we walk. So I do agree that there's a lot of more important parameters than simply the number or the age. It's just, I think, so ingrained in us. It's a way we define gender, age, which country we're from, whatever it is. And age is one of those that I think we need to sort of try and stay away from, because it's maybe less interesting than all the rest that define us as humans.
Thanks, Lise. Well, this is a discussion I would like to continue for the whole rest of the day, but I think it's time for us to turn the podium back to Christine. But I just want to say I'm come away both enlightened and inspired by a lot of what I heard today. And so I want to thank Christine and Dublin City University for hosting this really wonderful event. And thank you all to the panelists too.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
I just want to conclude by saying we've seen and heard from global experts and entrepreneurs around the world who have so generously shared their experience and their work. It puts the prospect of aging in a more positive light and challenges the narrative on aging that we need to seize the many opportunities that exist in the circular economy. Both the keynotes reiterated the need to look at the life cycle and not just on older age. Intergenerational engagement has been highlighted as a successful way to challenge age stereotypes, and we can only tackle this by facilitating and supporting intergenerational engagement, opportunities, and promoting solidarity between all generations. Universities are well placed to support the future of aging and contribute to the circular economy by investing in innovative solutions and harnessing the expertise within the academic community. And this is a core feature of DCU's Age-Friendly initiative. I'd like to thank all of our panelists today, absolutely fantastic presentations, and of course, all of the participants who stayed with us for the whole day. Tomorrow, we'll be continuing the discussion in a national context. And we'll have, over the course of the day, discussions on health, technology, work, creativity, enterprise, and tourism. So please do drop in and listen in if you're available. And the links will go out this evening to everybody and again in the morning. So I wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you again for your participation. I can't tell you how fantastic this has been, because I'm in the middle of the aging sector and I see all you guys, and they're always people I want to have myself to meet directly. So this is a great opportunity. I'm only sorry it hasn't been in person. So I want to wish you all a good evening and hope I see some of the participants on the call again tomorrow. Good evening. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.